Chapter 741. In the study room filled with the fragrance of tea, Tanxiu sat on the soft sofa and watched Tang Han busy making tea and serving snacks. A warm feeling rose inside him. The two of them didn't have much interaction outside, but they chatted happily after coming to the study room. How about this pu'er tea, little brother? Tang Han sat opposite Tanxiu and said with a smile. Tanxiu picked up the small teacup and gently took a sip. Then he nodded and praised. A tea taster can enjoy the taste of tea to the fullest. Just a sip will leave a fragrant taste in your mouth. This tea is really good, sis. Tang Han's eyes lit up. She gave a thumbs up and praised. Little brother, you're really worthy to be a top student of Shanghai University. I'll give you the rest of the best pu'er tea if you like it. Tanxiu smiled and said, a gentleman doesn't take what others like, sis. I rarely have time to calm down and drink tea, so it'll be a waste even if you give it to me. I'll come to visit you when I have more time in the future. You can treat me to this pu'er tea then. All right. Tang Han slightly smiled and took the electric flyswatter. She turned it on and touched it with her fingers. The static current drilled into her body and helped her suppress the darkening virus inside. Upon seeing this, Tanxiu got up and came to Tang Han's front. Under her astonished eyes, he grabbed her wrist and felt her pulse. Half a minute later, Tanxiu said, Sis, send someone to get a bowl of water. Also, you've been running the Tang Manor Martial Arts School for so many years, so you should have some trusted subordinates. Find them too. What for? Tang Han was confused. To help you remove the toxin of the darkening virus, said Tanxiu. What? Tang Han suddenly jumped up from the sofa and asked with a shocked face. Little brother, you said you can treat infectious diseases? That's right. I can, said Tanxiu. I know you're a young miracle-working doctor in the Chinese medicine circle, but I didn't expect you to be so amazing. You can even treat a horrible infectious disease like the darkening virus. Just wait for me. I'll immediately find someone. Tanxiu stopped her and said with a bitter smile. Sister, my method is very special, and the things I need are also different. You must never tell anyone that I can cure the darkening virus. Unless it's someone you trust the most, don't bring anyone here, and don't tell them. Tang Han asked in confusion, why? The medicine for treating infectious diseases is very special. Even if I refine it day and night, I'm afraid I won't be able to save everyone on Miss Source Island, said Tanxiu. In addition, the price is too high. It's not a problem to save a small number of people, but if there are too many, we won't be able to save them even if we sell everything we have. Tang Han suddenly understood and said with a face full of regret, using static electricity to suppress the darkening virus is only treating the symptoms, but not the root cause. Moreover, static electricity is very harmful to the human body. If we don't find a way to completely remove the darkening virus, I'm afraid Divine Dr. Gui Jianqiu is going all out to research the antidote, said Tanxiu with a bitter smile. The country will also send a large number of medical experts. Although I'm also a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, I'm not a saint. The best steel should be used on the edge of the blade. I must first solve the problem of the safety of the people I care about. All right. Feeling warm inside, Tang Han gently nodded and said, there are 12 people in the Tang Manor Martial School who are worthy of my trust. They are my loyal supporters and have made a lot of contributions to the Tang family. Further, I've trained an armed team of 206 people, all of whom are loyal and reliable. You see, isn't the number a bit too much? There's no problem with the number. Tanxiu shook his head and said, hurry up and gather them. I'll immediately treat the others after you're treated. All right. Tang Han went out and came back with a bowl of water shortly after. She watched Tanxiu break a pill and threw half of it into the water. Following Tanxiu's instruction, she took it and drank it all. A warm current surged inside her body like a tide, and the weakness brought by the darkening virus was alleviated at an astonishing speed. Although she couldn't see the situation inside her body, she could clearly feel the pain as if a needle was pricking every corner of her body after the comfortable feeling brought by the warm current. She could endure the pain, but the pain for a long time made her suffer unbearably. However, she believed that Tanxiu wouldn't harm her, so after enduring it for more than half an hour, She couldn't bear the stench coming from her body and quickly rushed to the bathroom. Creak. The study's door was pushed open again. Tang Han, who had just taken a bath, rubbed her belly and came to Tang Xiu's front with a strange expression. Although she still felt a bit weak, she could clearly feel that this weakness was caused by the black substance excreted from her body, as well as the 6th time she had diarrhea. It was not caused by the darkening virus. Little brother, I think I'm cured. Tang Han's eyes sparkled as she said with a smile. Tan Xiu let out a faint smile. The pill he used was the holy healing medicine he got from Ji Qi Mei. Although there weren't many holy healing medicines left, it was still a medicine taken by cultivators, so how could the darkening virus contend with its effect? As a matter of fact, Ji Qi Mei had followed Gu Yan'er to Earth. If it weren't for her interspatial ring being destroyed in the space tide, and losing all her belongings, she would have been able to refine immortal pills with her immortal tool cauldron, if she used it to refine pills. Where are those people, big sis? Tan Xiu stood up and asked with a smile. Come with me, said Tang Han. They've been placed in the dormitory building of the martial arts field, and should be gathered there now. A few minutes later, Tan Xiu took Tang Han with Mo Ao and the others as they came to the martial arts field of the Tang Manor Martial Arts School. At this moment, aside from the 206 core members of the martial arts school, there were also 12 confidants trained by Tang Han. These people were all real martial arts experts. Although none of them had reached the level of martial arts grandmaster, their strength was not to be underestimated. Water. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Tan Xiu took the water from Mo Ao and then put a half-holy healing medicine into the water. With a very serious expression, Tang Han said in a deep voice, Everyone, some of you may know the one next to me, but some may not. Regardless of whether you know him or not, I need to tell you now that he's my cousin, Tan Xiu. He was ordered by the family to come here to solve the infectious disease problem. Do keep in mind that the medicine is extremely rare, so I can only give it to my closest confidants. Therefore, once you take the medicine, the infectious disease problem will be completely solved. You must never spread this matter out. Tang Han's trusted subordinates all revealed looks of pleasant surprise. They were troubled by the darkening virus, and in their hearts, they had already lost all hope. Although stimulating the body with static electricity could temporarily suppress the deterioration of the darkening virus, it was only a glimmer of hope. But now, they finally realized that the crisis could be resolved and their safety could be guaranteed. As the medicine that dissolved the holy healing medicine was taken by everyone, Tang Han immediately dismissed everyone. She was perfectly aware of the consequences of taking the medicine, so she naturally didn't want to see her subordinates embarrassed, let alone smell the stench. After returning to Tang Han's study room, Tan Xiu had just sat down when he asked, Who's the richest and most powerful person in Mist Source Island? Is it someone surnamed Miao? Miao Hingfu? Tang Han was surprised. Why are you asking about him? Tan Xiu's eyes gleamed with a cold light as he said, It's the father's fault for not teaching his son well. His son Miao Wenlei is simply a beast. I killed Miao Wenlei and some of his thugs. Since I've done it, I must cut the weeds and eliminate the roots to avoid future troubles. Tang Han stared at Tan Xiu with a dumbfounded expression. After a long while, she forced a smile and said, Little brother, you're really... Forget it. I've already killed him, so I must cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. In fact, it's not the father's fault for not teaching his son well. It's just a counterexample of the father is a hero and the son is a hero. Miao Hongfu is ruthless and cunning. God knows how many people he has harmed over the years. However, he always does it cleanly every time. Even if the government wants to take action, they can't find any evidence. Besides, he also has people above him. Tan Xiu frowned and asked, He has people above him? Who is it? Mu Jianhua of the Mu family in the imperial capital, answered Tang Han. What? Exclaimed Tan Xiu. What's wrong? Asked Tang Han confused. The Mu family may be quite powerful in the imperial capital, but I'm afraid it's much worse compared to our Tang family, no? You don't need to make such a fuss about it. Tan Xiu hesitated and forced a smile. I won't make a fuss if it's just the Mu family. But the problem is, Sai Mu Jianhua is my nominal future father-in-law. Pft. Tang Han was at a loss whether to cry or laugh. You're really something, little brother. The dignified first beauty of the imperial capital, Mu Weining, was actually taken by you. But, ha ha ha, you actually killed the son of the person who was under the protection of your future husband. I dare say that your future father-in-law will go all out against you if you kill Miao Hongfu. Tan Xiu was a bit helpless inwardly and forced a smile. It won't go that far, right? It won't go that far, asked Tang Han with a smile. Mu Jianhua is just a good-for-nothing clansman in the eyes of the Mu family. Even if his father is the Mu family's patriarch, the position of the Mu family's patriarch will never be passed to him in the future. I presume you know something about your future father-in-law. That guy is simply, let's put it this way. If you kill Miao Hongfu, it's tantamount to cutting off your father-in-law's biggest source of wealth. It's no wonder he won't go all out against you. No, that's not right. Tan Xiu frowned and said, if Mu Jianhua has a source of money like Miao Hongfu, how could he let his daughter give him money to plug the hole? Tang Han was surprised, but she immediately said, perhaps you've underestimated your future father-in-law's extravagance. Let's not talk about other things. Just 3 years ago, I heard that Mu Jianhua lost more than 600 million yuan in Las Vegas. Holy shit! Tan Xiu was startled by Mu Jianhua's extravagance. Chapter 742. On the south side of the mountain in the center of Miss Source Island, members of the Reston organization were stationed in the east of a village of about 2,000 residents. The leader of the group was the ruthless second-in-command, Zhenlei Duomo. Zhenlei Duomo's background was very mysterious. Apart from the boss of the Reston organization, the mysterious strongest person, no one else knew about her past. At the age of 12, Zhenlei Duomo drifted to Mexico, grew up in a drug den, and lived in a criminal paradise. She was very strong. So strong that all the members of the Reston organization were secretly afraid of her name. Even some gangs that were stronger than the Reston organization did not dare to provoke them. It was not because of the mysterious boss, but because of Zhenlei Duomo's existence. The East. This was the place that Zhenlei Duomo dreamed of coming to, but for a whole 20 years, she had never stepped into the territory of Wuxia. This was because she remembered the warning of the woman who helped her live until the age of 12 and taught her magical martial arts. Do not enter Wuxia with blood on your hands. This time, she finally made an exception and came to the east, but she believed that the existence of Miss Source Island was not considered Wuxia territory. On the one hand, she was instructed by the boss of the gang to come to Miss Source Island to seize the mineral resources and wealth. On the other hand, she still hoped to find traces of that woman here. Even if she could not see her, as long as she could find clues that she was still alive, that would be enough. Knock knock. There was a knock on the door and the voice of her trusted subordinate came from outside. Boss, we found traces of a battle near the White Fog area south of the mountain. It's very strange, there are no traces of firearms being used. It's like a battle scene caused by cold weapons. Pa! Zhenlei Duomo instantly appeared at the door. As the door opened and closed in an instant, her confidant was already in the room. A scene caused by cold weapons? Zhenlei Duomo asked with a cold face. Her subordinate felt a chill in his heart. Even though he knew that Zhenlei Duomo was very powerful and had terrifying strength that far exceeded normal humans, he was still afraid to be caught in the room in an instant. Suppressing the fear, he braced himself and said, yes, very shocking traces of a battle. It's like a scene caused by a powerful beast, but according to our judgment, it's not a beast, so it can only be the work of a human. No, there are other mutant races. Be more specific, said Zhenlei Duomo in a deep voice. After our investigation, we found traces left behind by the legendary vampires, and the scene caused by an adept. Jean La had already gone over, and should be back soon. She might be able to bring back a more comprehensive survey result, the subordinate said. Zhenlei Duomo's eyes flashed with a cold light. She had fought with vampires and metahumans before. She knew that both vampires and mutants possessed terrifying strength. Of course, she also had 2 arcanists under her, and Jean La was one of them. You go out first. After Jinla returns, tell her to come see me immediately. Yes. Night fell. Zhenlei Duomo stood by the window on the second floor with a solemn expression, looking northwest. That's the direction where the traces of battle were left near the white fog area in the south of the mountain, as reported by the subordinate. Suddenly, her expression changed slightly, and her figure instantly leaped out of the window. In the blink of an eye, she had already appeared in the vicinity of the village, which was a few hundred meters away. She looked at the 3 or 4 figures that were fleeing for their lives in a sorry state. Her body flickered, and she appeared in front of them. What's going on? Zhenlei Duomo looked at her 4 subordinates, who were covered with wounds and looked terrible. Her eyes seemed to be able to spit out fire, but she still suppressed it and asked in a deep voice. Boss, it's the enemy. Our 10-man squad was patrolling nearby, when we didn't expect to encounter a group of people. As a result, all 6 of our companions were killed by them, said one of the scarred middle-aged black men. Zhenlei Duomo's complexion changed and she asked, who are they? The young man in the lead claims to be the only son of Miss Source Island's richest man, Miao Hongfu, Miao Wenlei. He's very insolent and arrogant, and his men are very strong. They immediately opened fire at the slightest disagreement, said the middle-aged black man. Zhenlei Duomo's eyes turned cold and she said in a heavy tone, the richest man in Miss Source Island? Tell me which direction are they and where they should be now? They're behind us, southwest of where we're fleeing. I don't know where they are now, but we had a fight a few kilometers away, and it's only been 10 minutes. They shouldn't be far from there. Go back, all of you. Zhenlei Duomo gave her orders and instantly ran southwest. She didn't use her ghost-like movement skills in front of her subordinates, but once she was out of their sight, she immediately soared into the air and stepped on the tree branches with the tips of her feet, shuttling through the air. In the southwest of the village, the terrain was quite high and the view was excellent. Near a towering ancient tree, 6 corpses were lying there, 2 of which were riddled with bullets. Bastard! Zhenlei Duomo's eyelids twitched a few times. She fiercely stomped the ground, and cracks instantly spread out like a spider web. She had a lot of subordinates, so it didn't matter if some of them died. But those she brought to Miss Source Island were almost all her trusted subordinates, and it was not easy to train them. But now 6 of them died and 4 were seriously injured. Such a loss made her feel a bit distressed. Zhenlei Duomo clenched her fists, and was about to use the communication device to contact her subordinates in the station. Suddenly her eyes narrowed. She inadvertently found a row of words carved on the forehead of one of her subordinates. Idiot, fuck your grandpa. Boom! Zhenlei Duomo turned around and fiercely punched the big tree next to her. The tree trunk that even 2 people couldn't wrap their arms around was broken by her punch, and fell to the ground with a loud crash, splashing up a cloud of dust. Miao Wenlei. Miao Hongfu. Sometimes wisdom was more terrifying than force. A few kilometers away, Yi Shisan held an infrared high-powered telescope and stared at Zhenlei Duomo's angry expression. He just joked with Shueisha about whether Zhenlei Duomo would stomp her feet in anger when she came to the scene where her subordinates were killed. But the result was that Zhenlei Duomo just punched a towering ancient tree and knocked it down. She shouldn't be an ability user. She shouldn't be a vampire either. Yi Shisan and Zidane, who also held a telescope, spoke at the same time. After that, both of them fell into silence at the same time. After a long time, when Zhenlei Duomo's figure disappeared in the distance, Yi Shisan said in a deep voice, "We must report this situation to boss. That woman is too powerful. Even we may not be able to compare with her. It'll be very troublesome if something goes wrong in the plan." Zidane, who had always been confident and cautious, nodded and said, "We may not know much about Miao Hongfu's strength, but as long as he's still an ordinary person, he's absolutely no match for Zhenlei Duomo. A powerhouse like him can exterminate a large number of ordinary people. Doesn't boss want to use the Reston Mafia to uproot the Miao family's forces?" said Yi Shisan. "All right then. You report the woman's situation to boss, and we'll proceed with the next plan immediately." Understood. Wolfpack City. The Qingyuan group was located in the center of the city and occupied a large area. 5 4-story buildings formed a circle, surrounding a 3-story building in the middle. Between the 5 buildings and the 3-story building in the middle was a corridor in the air, just like 5 dragons holding a pearl. The top floor of the 3-story building was the private forbidden area of the Qingyuan Group's chairman, Miao Hengfu, where even the company's top executives had no right to enter. This was Miao Hengfu's place of leisure and entertainment. The interior was extraordinarily luxurious with all kinds of entertainment facilities. Even many of the Qingyuan Group's top executives were aware that there were at least 10 beautiful women on the 3rd floor, which was where Miao Hengfu's mistresses lived. Life must be enjoyed to the fullest. Don't let the golden goblet be empty facing the moon. Miao Hengfu especially admired this line of the poem, and even vividly expressed the word, enjoy to the fullest. He was comfortably nestled on the soft sofa, enjoying the massage of a beautiful woman, and tasting the grapes handed to him by another beautiful woman from time to time. His expression was indescribably lazy. Ring, ring, ring. The urgent ringtone of a cell phone suddenly sounded. Miao Hengfu didn't move. He didn't even lift his eyelids. Instead, it was the beautiful woman beside him who obediently took the phone and looked at the number on the screen. It's an unfamiliar number. Answer it. Miao Hengfu finally raised his eyelids and watched the beautiful woman pick up the phone. Just as he was about to speak, a hurried roar came from the other side. Save me, boss. Damned Reston Mafia. Ah. After the shrill scream, there was no more sound coming from the other side of the phone. Miao Hengfu's expression greatly changed. He abruptly jumped up from the sofa and went downstairs with a gloomy face. He walked to the office on the 2nd floor, and was immediately followed by 2 of the company's top executives. Find out who this number belongs to. Got it. One of the executives memorized the number and quickly left the office. However, a minute or 2 later he hurriedly came back and reported, "I've found out, boss. It's the private number of a security guard in our company's security team. He's also one of the members you listed as the Flame Squad." "Where is he now?" asked Miao Hengfu in a deep voice. "I just asked around and the news I got is that he went out with your son last night and hasn't returned yet," said the executive. Miao Hengfu's expression froze. Then his pupils violently contracted and a horrified look burst out from his eyes. He immediately took the phone and dialed his son, Miao Wenlei's number, but no one answered. Something happened. Miao Hengfu's heart thumped and a bad premonition spontaneously rose in his heart. Chapter 743. He immediately shouted, "Find out Wenlei's whereabouts. His phone can still be reached. Contact the police and let them use communication equipment to locate Wenlei's private phone number. Also, immediately send people out to search for him. Remember, no matter what method you use, no matter what price you have to pay, you must find him in the shortest time possible." The senior executive hesitated and smiled bitterly. "Boss, the situation is special now. All of us have been infected. I'm afraid it's unrealistic to send people to search for him on a large scale. I think we should get all the members of our security team ready to go. Once the police find the location of young Master Miao's phone number, our people will immediately rush over." Miao Hengfu suddenly woke up. It was a very special time now. The entire Mist Source Island was infected with the darkening virus. Even if they had found a way to temporarily suppress the virus, it would not solve the root cause. Now that the entire Mist Source Island was in a state of panic, it was indeed unrealistic to send people to search for his son on a large scale. "Let's do as you say. However, send someone to the security team to understand the situation, and ask who left with Wenlei. Ask if anyone knows where they went. Do it immediately." As the 2 senior executives of the company left, Miao Hengfu paced around the office with a gloomy face. He didn't believe that the company's security would ask for help for no reason. The members selected by him to join the Flame Squad were all people who had followed him to do some shameful things. They were also the thugs he had focused on training. Sure enough, soon the investigation results were sent to Miao Hengfu. A total of 7 people left with his son last night. All of them were members of the Flame Squad. Including his son, there were 8 people in total. After eating and drinking at the Big Billionaire Entertainment Club last night, they left this morning. Miao Hengfu looked at the road surveillance video sent by the traffic police. What made him furious was that his good-for-nothing son actually tied a little girl to the roof of the car. and then drove at an extremely fast speed along the road in the center of the city, in the direction of the mountain in the center. Guochang, take some people to look for him. Miao Hengfu called the leader of the Flame Squad, who was also his trusted thug. Tang Manor Martial Arts School. Tan Xiao had already received Bullet's report, and when he heard that Reston's Zhenlei Duomo was actually a master, his interest was immediately piqued. After all, Zidane and Yi Shisan were all cultivators, and they had already reached the foundation establishment stage. Even they were ashamed of their strength. Tan Xiao was curious about Zhenlei Duomo's identity. You want to go yourself? Tang Han asked hesitantly. Tan Xiao nodded and said, I'm indeed interested in seeing the situation there. After all, it was not normal for a foreign gangster to have such power. Sister, wait for my news at Tang Manor Martial Arts School. This time, I'm not just targeting Miao Hengfu and Reston's organization. I've also targeted 2 more powerful forces. As long as the plot goes according to my plan, many of the crises on Miss Source Island can be solved. I'll go with you, Tang Han said. Although I haven't reached the Martial Dao Grandmaster realm yet, I'm only a step away from it. Also, I'll bring a group of experts with me in case of emergencies. I know what you're thinking, sister. Tan Xiao waved his hand. But Grandpa sent me here, which proves that I have the ability to solve these problems. Don't worry. There are only a few experts on the entire Miss Source Island who can make me dread them. The reason why I use some schemes and tricks is that I'm too lazy to do it myself. Also, the Tang Manor Martial Arts School is the backup plan of our Tang family on Miss Source Island. If it's not necessary to be exposed, then keep a low profile and continue hiding. Tang Han hesitated for a moment before she finally nodded and said, All right then. But pay attention to your safety. As long as there's life, there's hope. Don't put yourself in danger. I know what I'm doing, Tan Xiao replied, and then drove away from Tang Manor Martial Arts School alone. Late at night, he met up with Yi Shisan and Zidane in the mountain forest more than 10 kilometers north of Mixed Summit City. How come it's only you two? Where are the others? They all went to inquire about the news. We may have already laid out the layout, but we still need to pay attention to the plot, said Yi Shisan respectfully. We can adjust the plan or add fuel to the fire if any accident happens midway. I'm at ease with you handling the matter, said Tan Xiao with a smile. Anyways, what's the situation with that surnamed Miao? Zhang Ju is in charge of keeping an eye on them. He sent me the news 2 hours and 15 minutes ago, said Yi Shisan. Miao Hengfu's henchman Guochang has led dozens of Qingyuan Group's security guards to rush to the place where we killed Miao Wenlei overnight. Black Bear also sent me the news. Be it Miao Wenlei's mobile phone, or the other 7 people's mobile phones. All of them have been receiving calls. Black Bear picked up a mobile phone and only connected for 3 or 4 minutes, but it should be enough time. Tan Xiao squinted his eyes and asked, You mean satellite positioning? Did someone from the Public Security Bureau or the traffic police get involved? Zidane has invaded the network and confirmed that the traffic police are involved. Yi Shisan nodded. The people from the Wolfpack City's Public Security Bureau have already gathered, but they suddenly disbanded for some unknown reason. Tan Xiao nodded and sneered. Miao Hengfu can become the richest local tycoon in Miss Source Island, so he must have a lot of connections. It's normal for him to be able to influence the Public Security Bureau. Just wait. We'll watch a good show. Boss, we may have dug a pit for the Stygian Club and those elementalists to jump, but we can't monitor them in secret. We can't adjust the plan in time if something goes wrong on both sides. Yi Shisan hesitated. Ao has found out that those elementalists belong to the world's largest organization, the Pyramid, said Tan Xiao with a smile. The Stygian Club and the Pyramid have always been fighting openly and covertly, with constant friction between them. This time, we're going to frame the Stygian Club for the deaths of those elementalists, so they will definitely tear off all pretense of cordiality. What I'm concerned about now is how bad the losses will be for both sides. On this night, more than a dozen foreign forces in the entire Miss Source Island were in a state of panic. The reason was that dozens of powerhouses from the Pyramid organization had first attacked the Stygian Club station in Miss Source Island. 4 werewolves and a vampire viscount were silently killed, and their corpses were taken away. Subsequently, more than a dozen other foreign forces also suffered sneak attacks, with 2 organizations suffering heavy losses. The traces left at the scene of the battle were either werewolf corpses or vampire body parts without exception. In short, all the spearheads pointed at the Stygian club. Early in the morning, the first ray of sunlight rose from the east, illuminating the entire Mist Source Island. At the Qingyuan Group's HQ, Miao Hengfu received the news that Miao Wenlei and the 7 company security guards were all killed. Not only that, but the enemy also left an extremely arrogant slogan. Not only did they admit that it was the Reston organization, but they also left a slogan to destroy Miao Hengfu and the Qingyuan Group. Assemble! Miao Hengfu flew into a rage and ordered the security forces and his own private armed forces to assemble immediately. Even a batch of firearms that he had secretly bought had been distributed. However, dozens of cars rushed to the place where Miao Wenlei's body was dumped, led by Miao Hengfu himself. However, when the convoy just left the Wolfpack city for a dozen kilometers, they were ambushed by dozens of armed forces. In just a few minutes, Miao Hengfu's men suffered heavy losses. A few kilometers away, Tan Xiu was holding a pair of binoculars as he watched the fierce battle taking place on the road at the foot of the mountain with a satisfied smile on his handsome face. The battle was fierce, but most of the people killed were Miao Hengfu's men, while Reston's men suffered minimal losses. She's here. Tan Xiu's expression suddenly changed. Through the binoculars, he clearly saw a woman carrying a long blade on her back instantly appearing in the convoy. She was like a grim reaper, reaping lives after the long blade was unsheathed. In just half a minute, the remaining 40 to 50 people were all killed, including Miao Hengfu. The show's over. Time to go. Tan Xiu put down the binoculars and handed it to Yi Shisan beside him with a smile. Boss, you never miss anything. You can solve a lot of trouble with just a simple scheme. You're really amazing. Yi Shisan smiled. Don't flatter me, Tan Xiu said with a smile. Just as he took a step forward, his expression suddenly changed, and a sharp light burst out from his eyes. Go back. He instantly unleashed the long sword in his dantian space, and a blade light that was tens of meters long slashed down the hillside like a dazzling waterfall. More than a dozen trees were split into pieces, and a long ditch that was tens of meters long and half a meter deep was left on the ground. Then, a lightning-like black shadow sprang out from the violent blade shadows. An enemy? Yi Shisan and Zidane unleashed their flying swords at the same time, and their figures were as fast as lightning as they shot toward the black shadow. In just a few seconds, they had already appeared on both sides of the figure. Stop. Tan Xiu followed closely behind and shouted before Yi Shisan and Zidane launched their attacks. That figure was Zhenlei Duomo. When she killed dozens of people, she had already noticed that someone was hiding in the dark and watching them. She hadn't found the figure of the person who was watching them, but just as Tan Xiu and the other 2 left, she finally noticed something unusual. She didn't expect that she would be greeted by a thunderous sword strike. Who are you? Zhenlei Duomo looked a bit embarrassed as she angrily shouted with a long saber in her hand. She was shocked because she would have been directly killed by that thunderous sword strike if she hadn't dodged fast enough. Tan Xiu slightly furrowed his brows. He had thought of several identities of Zhenlei Duomo, but he never expected that she turned out to be a cultivator. Moreover, her cultivation was very high, and she was only a step away from the golden core stage. After a moment of silence, he slowly said, a foreign woman, especially the female leader of a foreign gang, turns out to be a cultivator. It's really inconceivable. Chapter 744. At this moment, Zhenlei Duomo had already guessed Tan Xiu's identity. She was pleasantly surprised, but her expression was indescribably complicated. One of the reasons she came to Mist Source Island was to understand the situation of the mysterious eastern country's cultivators. It would be best if she could inquire about the woman who had raised and taught her. Do you know my identity? Zhenlei Duomo looked at Tan Xiu with vigilance and asked. You're the famous Mexican mafia's second-in-command, the rumored demoness with both wisdom and strength. How could I not know you? Tan Xiu said with a smile. It's just that I didn't expect to meet you on this Mist Source Island. It seems that there are many people who covet the resources of Wuxia. Since you know me, then please tell me who you are, said Jinlei Duomo coldly. Tan Xiao. Tan Xiao said lightly. Jinlei Duomo wasn't satisfied. A name meant nothing to her. What she wanted to know was Tan Xiao's identity. Moreover, she realized that this guy named Tan Xiao definitely didn't appear here by chance. You schemed against me? Tang Xiao let out a hollow laugh. He indeed schemed against Jinlei Duomo, but Miao Wenlei and Miao Hengfu had long been dead. The dead could not tell the truth, so he naturally didn't want to admit it. Furthermore, he also felt a bit regretful. Miao Hengfu was strong in appearance but weak in reality. He didn't even have a martial arts grandmaster under him, so he couldn't bring any losses to the Reston Mafia. Otherwise, he could have killed two birds with one stone and solved more troubles. Jinlei Duomo, I don't know what you mean by that. We just happened to pass by and didn't expect to see such a good show. However, I would like to ask you, who gave you the guts to kill a citizen of Wuxia in our territory? How could those trash kill so many of my men near my camp? Jinlei Duomo angrily said. Do all the Chinese like to play the fool? Ring ring ring. Tan Xiao's communicator suddenly rang. Under the angry gaze of Jinlei Duomo, he answered the phone and said, What's the matter? Half a minute later, Tan Xiao's expression turned strange. He grunted and hung up the call. Then he looked at Jinlei Duomo with a faint smile and said, All right. I admit that I sent people to do this, but I did it out of goodwill. It was all for your own good, for the good of your Reston Mafia. Jinlei Duomo angrily shouted. You killed my men and said it was for my own good? What nonsense are you talking about? If my guess is correct, you still don't know what happened in the village where you were stationed before, said Tan Xiao with a straight face. Similarly, I guess you haven't received the news about what happened to the dozen or so foreign forces last night. But what I can tell you is that using the lives of some ordinary people to help you and save the Reston organization from disaster, this is a kindness to you. In other words, I'm your savior. What is it? Jinlei Duomo was stunned. She looked at the serious expression on Tan Xiao's face and couldn't wrap her head around it. Since he admitted that he was plotting against her, how did he suddenly become her savior? She had lost 6 of her men. Are you spouting nonsense? Or are you deliberately teasing me? Tan Xiao sneered. It seems that your Reston organization's intel is really bad. Let me tell you something. Last night, the third most dangerous organization in the world, the Stygian Club, attacked more than a dozen foreign forces. Some of the weaker forces were almost uprooted. The world's largest organization, Pyramid, launched a fierce counterattack against the Stygian Club. The other 2 forces that were stationed in the village at the same time, as you also suffered a lot of losses. I picked your Reston organization and let you leave there temporarily to avoid being attacked, right? What? The Stygian Club? Jinlei Duomo's expression drastically changed, and a deep dread could be seen in her eyes. As a cultivator, she naturally knew some inside stories that ordinary people didn't know. But how dare the Stygian Club? If my guess is correct, the foreign forces in the entire Mist Source Island have begun to secretly unite. Tan Xiao sneered. The Stygian Club is too ambitious, and it's like poking the hornet's nest this time. Next will be a life-and-death struggle between the various forces and the Stygian Club. But I pulled your Reston organization out of this mess. Don't tell me I'm wrong? This. Jinlei Duomo felt that Tan Xiao was twisting words and forcing logic, but she couldn't refute him. If what he said was true, then she was really lucky. After all, the Stygian Club was a terrifying force that the Reston organization she belonged to couldn't be compared to. No. To be precise, even 100 Reston organizations couldn't compare to the Stygian Club's terrifying power. Jinlei Duomo took a deep breath and slowly said, Mr. Tang, I haven't received any news about what you said yet. Since we're not enemies, I have no intention of becoming enemies with the Chinese cultivators. Then I hope we won't be enemies in the future. One more enemy is better than one more friend. Tan Xiao smiled indifferently. If you're willing to leave Miss Source Island with the Reston organization's people, I guarantee we won't be enemies. Jinlei Duomo frowned and said, Whether our Reston organization's people leave Miss Source Island or not has nothing to do with you, Mr. Tang. Don't tell me you can represent the Chinese government? Tang Xiu directly took out the green book, flashed it and said, "Unfortunately, I can indeed represent the Chinese government. Having this thing is equivalent to having official rights. I personally brought some people to Miss Source Island to solve the problem here. I can tell you that all the foreign forces will become the enemies of our country if they continue to stay on Miss Source Island. They're also my enemies." A cold glint flashed in Zhenlei Duomo's eyes, but she still instantly restrained her aura. She seriously observed Tan Xiu a few times and finally slowly said, "You can leave Miss Source Island if you can answer a question of mine, and I'm satisfied with the answer." "Say it." Tan Xiu could see that Zhenlei Duomo was unwilling, but he knew that she wouldn't dare to be his enemy. "Mr. Tang may represent the Chinese government, but you're a cultivator after all. You should know about the Chinese cultivation world, right?" asked Zhenlei Duomo. "I want to ask you about someone who's also a cultivator." "Who is it?" asked Tan Xiu in astonishment. "I'm not particularly clear about her situation." Zhenlei Duomo frowned. "I only know that her name is Yen. She was in her 20s 20 years ago, but she should be in her 40s or 50s now. 40 or 50s. Yen. I'm sorry, I've never heard of this person." Tan Xiu shook his head. A disappointed look appeared in Zhenlei Duomo's eyes as she bitterly said, "Since Mr. Tang doesn't know, then I can only consult other cultivators in China. To tell you the truth, she supported me when I was growing up and later taught me a cultivation technique. But I lost contact with her many years ago." "I've never heard of this person you mentioned." Tan Xiu nodded lightly. "I don't know much about the situation in China's cultivation world. Many cultivators live incognito or hide in famous mountains and rivers. Unless they want to, it's very difficult for others to know their existence." Zhenlei Duomo didn't want to spend more time with Tan Xiu. Since she couldn't get the information she wanted, she immediately cupped her fists and said, "If that's the case, then I'll take my leave." Tan Xiu didn't stop her. He watched her leave and was about to call Zidane and Yi Shisan to leave. Suddenly, Zidane came to Tan Xiu's side and whispered, "Boss, you seem to have forgotten someone." "Who is it?" asked Tan Xiu, puzzled. "The founder of the Everlasting Feast Hall, the former big boss," said Zidane. "Guyenne?" Tan Xiu stared blankly, and his expression slightly changed. His precious disciple should be in her 20s more than 20 years ago. And her name also had the word Yen in it. Could there be some connection between them? Go and call her back. Tan Xiu directly sat cross-legged and took out a pen and paper from his interspatial ring. Just as he was about to draw Gu Yenner's portrait, he suddenly recalled something and patted his forehead. He took out his mobile phone, opened the photo album, and selected Gu Yenner's photo. A minute later, Zhenlei Duomo stood in front of Tan Xiu with a vigilant face. "Is there anything else?" Zhenlei Duomo was afraid of Tan Xiu, but she wasn't afraid of him. She knew very well that she was not Tan Xiu's opponent, but he wouldn't be able to stop her if she wanted to escape. Tan Xiu handed over his mobile phone and lightly said, "Look at this photo. Is it this woman?" Zhenlei Duomo took the mobile phone with a confused look. When her eyes fell on the photo, her pupils suddenly contracted and her body violently trembled a few times. "Yes, it's her." Zhenlei Duomo's voice was a bit trembling. She clearly remembered this face. It was the face that was deeply engraved in her heart. She was so beautiful and unparalleled in the past, and she was so cold and elegant. She didn't know what was holy and pure before, but she understood the meaning of the word, holy and pure, the first time she saw her. Tan Xiu raised his hand to touch the bridge of his nose and secretly smiled wryly inside. He knew that Gu Yenner's footprints had been to every corner of the earth, but he didn't expect that she had left such a legacy in Mexico. "Why are you looking for her?" Tan Xiu was silent for a moment, and then slowly asked. Zhenlei Duomo reluctantly moved her eyes away from the photo, and said with an irrepressible excitement, "She's my benefactor, my master, and half a mother to me. I made a mistake in front of her that year. I shouldn't have killed a bad guy, so she left and didn't allow me to step into China. But I miss her." Upon hearing this, Tan Xiu stared blankly and immediately guessed Gu Yenner's thoughts in the past. She would never despise Zhenlei Duomo for killing someone, because who didn't have hands stained with blood from the immortal world? Perhaps It was because of her body at that time. Chapter 745. Tanxio quietly observed Jinlei Duomo. He could sense her emotional fluctuations, and the intense longing she had for Gu Yan'er. Speaking of which, the core experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall were very lucky. At least, they were luckier than Jinlei Duomo since they had the Everlasting Feast Hall as their home. Jinlei Duomo, on the other hand, was like a lonely ghost who had been wandering outside for so many years. Tanxio's eyes then fell on Zidane and Yi Shisan's faces. Sure enough, they looked at Jinlei Duomo with softer eyes than before. Jinlei Duomo, do you want to see Yan'er? Jinlei Duomo's spirit shook and she hurriedly asked, Can I see her? Do you know her whereabouts? Of course I know her whereabouts. Tanxio nodded and said. As for whether you can see her or not, it depends on your performance. How do you want me to perform? Asked Jinlei Duomo quickly. I can let your rest and organization stay in Miss Source Island for the time being, said Tanxio. But you must obey my orders while you're on Miss Source Island. Of course, I can also guarantee your safety on Miss Source Island. I can guarantee your safety even if it's the Stygian Club and Pyramid. Jinlei Duomo shot a deep look at Tanxio. A contemptuous look gradually appeared in her eyes as she shook her head and said, You don't know how terrifying the Stygian Club and Pyramid are. If I were you, I'd never dare to talk big like that. Tanxio grinned and said, There's an idiom in Wuxia that says a frog at the bottom of a well. Even if you know some secrets in this world, it's just a superficial understanding. I, Tanxio, don't like to talk big, but you can see if I can protect you or not. Why should I believe you? Asked Jinlei Duomo cautiously after hesitating for a long time. Because you have no choice at all, said Tanxio lightly. If you want to stay on Miss Source Island and see Yan'er, you can only choose to believe me. Also, you don't have to worry about me plotting against you, because if I wanted to kill you, you would already be a corpse by now. Jinlei Duomo was smart. Looking at Tanxio's confident expression, she asked after a moment of silence, What do you want me to do? I need you to help me kill the Stygian Club, the Pyramid, and dozens of other forces, or drive them out of Miss Source Island, said Tanxio decisively. Solve the problem of Miss Source Island, and I can take you to see Yan'er. Jinlei Duomo's pupils shrank. She suddenly realized that this young man named Tanxio was not as simple as she had imagined. At the very least, the power he had was not limited to just him and his two subordinates. Jinlei Duomo took a deep breath and asked, One last question. What is your relationship with her? Yi Shisan, who was standing at the side, was angry because Jinlei Duomo didn't answer Tanxio for a long time. At this moment he finally couldn't help but step forward and shout in a deep voice, Jinlei Duomo, you ask too many questions. Boss already thinks highly of you by answering your previous questions. Now answer boss. Are you willing to work for boss in Miss Source Island? You, Jinlei Duomo furrowed her brows. Yi Shisan waved his hand to interrupt her and sternly shouted, I'm warning you, this is your only chance to go home. If you don't cherish it, you can only continue to be a wandering ghost abroad and fend for yourself. This, the chance to go home? Jinlei Duomo was shocked and seemed to realize something in a flash. She looked at Tanxio in disbelief before shifting her eyes to Yi Shisan and Zidane. Countless thoughts churned in her mind. Finally, she gritted her teeth and said, I promise you, but I can choose to refuse if your request is too much. Tanxio smiled indifferently and said, First of all, disperse your Reston men. I don't need them as armed forces to fight with other forces, but I hope they can serve as intelligence personnel to understand the movements of other forces on Miss Source Island and report back to me in time. You're very powerful, so you can stay with me. Jinlei Duomo pondered for a moment and slowly nodded. I'll give the order right away. Tanxio stopped her and ordered, Remember, tell your men to behave themselves and don't do anything outrageous on Miss Source Island. This place belongs to China, and I'm responsible for solving the crisis on Miss Source Island, so I don't want your men to make trouble for me. Understood. Jinlei Duomo replied and instantly rushed toward her men in the distance. Zidane, who stood beside Tanxio, retracted her gaze from Jinlei Duomo's back and asked in a low voice, Boss, do you want to recruit her into our everlasting feast hall? Tanxio sighed. She has some relationship with Yin, after all. It's worth considering if she's not a bad person. Let's observe first. The problem on Miss Source Island is very serious. Those foreign forces are like hungry wolves, eyeing the resources of Miss Source Island, and trying to threaten the Chinese government. But we don't have much time, and I still have to participate in the research of the darkening virus antidote, so we must cut the Gordian knot quickly. What should we do next? Asked Zidane. Zhenlei Duomo has killed Miao Hengfu, so one of our hidden dangers has been eliminated, said Tan Xiao. The next step is to deal with those foreign forces. Let them kill each other, and we'll clean up the mess when most of them are dead. In the northern suburbs of Mixed Summit City, the Stygian Club's camp had been moved here because it was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, so Keithmore considered this place to be hidden. The pyramid elementalists seemed to have gone crazy and launched several attacks on them in succession, causing the 2 Spectre squads he recruited to suffer heavy losses. Even Basil and Alady were badly injured. Have you investigated it? Keithmore's eyes turned cold as he stared at the young man in front of him. I've investigated it thoroughly. The young man nodded. The attacks on the various forces last night were actually done by the pyramid's people. Our people were killed and their corpses were used to frame us. Now those forces have joined forces. On one hand, they are keeping a distance from the pyramid, while on the other hand, they are planning to attack us. Don't tell me they don't understand that this is all a conspiracy of the pyramid? Keithmore angrily shouted. No one is a fool since they can hold such power. The young man forced a smile. Yet they are still preparing to attack us, which means that our existence is a threat to them. Though they know that this is a conspiracy of the pyramid, the attack on them gives them an opportunity to unite and contend with us. Those people are ambitious. They want more resources and benefits. Keithmore sneered and immediately asked, what about the pyramid's people? They're only about 30 kilometers away from us now, answered the young man. They're stationed in the eastern mountains. After their investigation, they found that the number of people in the pyramid is far more than what we've investigated before. Furthermore, we also found that one of the pyramid's war elders, Bodit, has arrived. Ghoul war elder, Bodit? Keithmore's eyes turned cold and intense killing intent burst out from him. He had some dealings with most of the pyramid's war elders, and this ghoul war elder, Bodit, had a deep grudge against him. Arrange the blood array and blood poison. Keithmore uttered those words through gritted teeth. The young man's expression changed and he hurriedly said, Sir, once we arrange the blood array, we'll really have to fight them to the death. Slap. Keithmore slapped the young man and angrily shouted, Idiot! We're now in a situation where we have to fight them to the death. Go and tell them to get ready. Since they want to get rid of us, then we'll kill them first. Understood. The young man looked fearful and quickly crawled up from the ground and rushed out of the tent as though he was fleeing for his life. In the evening, Tan Xiao, Dan Yi Shisan, and Zhenlei Duomo quietly appeared in the eastern part of Mixed Summit City. After the 4 of them investigated, they found that all forces were stationed here. Whoosh, a ghost-like figure appeared nearby without a sound. Zhenlei Duomo instantly pulled out her long saber, and instantly locked the person with a dense killing intent. Don't! Tan Xiao immediately stopped Zhenlei Duomo. He looked at Jin Shi who appeared in front of him lightning fast and asked, What's the situation? Jin Shi indifferently glanced at Zhenlei Duomo and respectfully reported, Boss, Pyramid's people are stationed in the northwest of Mixed Summit City. We've investigated and determined that they have a total of 62 people. Further, we've also investigated that the leader of Pyramid is called Wuxia, the Wisdom War Elder. Tan Xiao nodded and sneered. The Pyramid's War Elder, hee. They really value Miss Source Island. To think that even such a big shot has appeared. It's not only the Wisdom War Elder Wuxia, but also the Ghoul War Elder Bodit, said Jin Shi with a solemn expression. It was Bodit and his men who attacked the Stygian Club last night. Yeah. Tan Xiao replied. He turned to look at Zhenlei Duomo and calmly said, Don't make a fuss about someone appearing here. Jin Shi is my man, and our men will arrive soon. Zhenlei Duomo was a bit shocked. She didn't expect that Tan Xiao had so many cultivators under him. Furthermore, The strength of this guy who just arrived was not to be underestimated. At this moment, she was curious about the number of men Tan Xiao had. From Tan Xiao's words, it seemed that there should be a few more, right? 2 hours later, Jinlei Duomo looked at the 9 men of Tan Xiao in front of her, and was shocked to the point that it was hard to be more shocked. 9 expert martial cultivators. To be able to control such a powerful force, no matter where they went, they would be a terrifying force, and they would be able to occupy a large territory. Chapter 746. In the dense mountain forest, Mo Ao and Shui Gui were like ghosts in the night as they approached Tan Xiao's position at lightning speed. It didn't take long for the duo to appear in front of Tan Xiao. Ha! Shui Gui suddenly furrowed his brows. When he saw Jinlei Duomo standing next to Tang Xiao, a fierce killing intent instantly erupted from his body. He instantly unleashed his flying sword and fiercely slashed it toward Jinlei Duomo. Tang Xiao's complexion slightly changed. He flickered and appeared in front of Jinlei Duomo lightning fast, and unleashed his sword to block Shui Gui's strike. As he took a step back, he angrily shouted, "Shui Gui, stop!" Shui Gui didn't realize what it meant for Jinlei Duomo to stand next to Tan Xiao. His expression slightly changed when he saw his boss blocking his attack. He instantly retracted his flying sword, but still shot a murderous look at Jinlei Duomo. "What's going on?" Tan Xiao frowned and asked. "It turns out to be Shui Gui." Jinlei Duomo sneered. "I didn't expect that your strength would improve so much after 7 years. What's wrong? Do you still want to avenge your water snake brother?" Whoosh! Aside from Mo Ao, the other 9 instantly unleashed their flying swords and glared at Jinlei Duomo with killing intent. The sudden change made Jinlei Duomo's expression slightly change, and she instantly retreated half a step. "Answer my question, Shui Gui." Tan Xiao frowned and asked in a deep voice. Shui Gui was loyal to Tan Xiao, and could sense the anger in Tan Xiao's tone. He quickly lowered his head and said, "Boss, I once had a younger brother called Water Snake. He used to be a core member of our everlasting feast hall. 7.5 years ago, we 2 brothers were on a mission abroad and met this woman. Her appearance didn't change much, so I'm 100% sure it's her. She killed my brother and seriously injured me, causing me to fall off a cliff and be trapped for several days, almost dying in a foreign country. I've been trying to find her all these years, but I didn't expect that she would appear here." Tan Xiao turned to look at Jinlei Duomo and asked in a deep voice, "You killed his brother? Why?" Jinlei Duomo bluntly said, "We're in different camps and each has its own master. In order to steal information and assassinate my employer, you 2 brothers have used many despicable methods. Yes, I killed the water snake, but if I didn't kill him, I would be the one who died. Come to think of it, that battle was caused by you guys. As for me, it can only be considered a counterattack." Although Shui Gui knew that what Jinlei Duomo said made sense, the one who died was still his younger brother. This hatred had been buried in his heart for many years, and he couldn't let it go. Tan Xiao had a headache. He didn't expect to encounter such a situation. However, he was biased toward Jinlei Duomo. Back then, they had fought to the death for their respective masters. It was either you die or I die. But hatred? How to solve it? Tan Xiao took a deep breath, waved his hand and said, "Shui Gui, you can talk about the enmity between you 2 after solving the matter on Miss Source Island. But I can tell you in advance that Jinlei Duomo is the same as you. Yen'er gave her grace when you were young. I'll personally take you back to Jingmen Island after solving the matter here. You can ask Yen'er about how to solve the enmity between you 2. After saying that, his eyes then shifted to the others and lightly said, "Put away your weapons. If you want to kill someone, then get rid of those foreign forces first." Jin Shi and the others took back their flying swords. Shui Gui hesitated for a moment before he also released his flying sword into his body. He didn't dare to disobey Tan Xiao's order, but he secretly made up his mind to make Jinlei Duomo pay the price after the matter on Miss Source Island was solved. Tan Xiao looked at Mo Ao and asked, "What news did you get from your side?" Mo Ao took out a map and respectfully said, "There's been some changes in the Stygian Club's camp. After our investigation, we found that the Stygian Club's people are arranging a very strange array. We've marked the location. It's on the only road to enter the Stygian Club's camp. Tanshio took the map and looked at it a few times. He then nodded and said, since the Stygian Club can become the third largest foreign force, they definitely have some unknown cards up their sleeves. Our purpose this time is very simple. We want them to kill each other, and both sides will suffer. The only thing we need to guard against now is the Pyramids people. Alright, let's go and watch the tigers fight. In the northern suburbs of Mixed Summit City, Tanshio quietly arrived with Mo Au and the others and circled to the mountain northwest of the Stygian Club's camp from another direction. After searching for a good location, Tanshio then quietly arranged a concealment array. We'll set up camp here and wait for those ambitious people to kill each other. Don't we have to add fuel to the fire in the dark, boss? Asked Mo Au. Of course we have to add fuel to the fire. Tanshio sneered. But I'll handle this myself. All of you stay here. Oh, do you still have those vampire corpses? Mo Au took out the broken wing from his interspatial ring and said, only these. Tanshio nodded with satisfaction and said, that's enough. You stay here and wait. You stay here and wait. Having said that, he suddenly realized something and his eyes swept over Shuegue and Jinlei Duomo. Then he indifferently said, remember my words. Put down your grudges for the time being, and wait until we return to Jingmen Island. I'll severely punish any of you if you dare to act in private. Understood. Understood. Shuegue and Jinlei Duomo glared at each other, and obediently complied. In the mountain forest tens of kilometers east of Mixed Summit City, dozens of tents were set up in a mess, with many heavily armed men vigilantly patrolling the surrounding environment. In one of the tents, more than a dozen leaders of various forces were gathered and quarreling with each other with flushed faces. I suggest we don't rush to act first. Let's make sure that all the members of the Stygian Club on Miss Source Island won't be able to escape even if they have wings. Then we'll encircle and annihilate all those divergent races of the Stygian Club, said a burly black man. In the face of absolute power, all conspiracies and tricks are like clay chickens and pottery dogs that can't withstand a single blow. We have more than a dozen forces, and there's no lack of real experts among them. Also, even if those divergent races are very powerful, we still have a lot of firepower support. None of them will be able to escape. That's why I suggest we launch a direct attack, shouted another white man in a deep voice. I think we'd better wait. It's best if we can act together with the pyramid. Else, the pyramid will take advantage of us once we and the Stygian Club suffer heavy losses. That's right. The pyramid's people are eyeing us covetously. They're also full of hatred toward the Stygian Club. We'll have stronger power if we join forces. In case the pyramid's people turn against us at the last minute, it'll only increase unforeseen events. I think we shouldn't go with them. In the chaotic scene, everyone wanted to decide according to their own ideas. For a time, the whole situation fell into a deadlock. A few kilometers away, Tanshio was like a ghost in the dark as he quietly approached two foreign men with guns. At the moment when the two of them were unaware, a sharp dagger tore open their throats and killed them immediately. Then he continued to wander around the periphery, constantly hunting and killing the forces on the periphery. 12. After Tanshio felt that it was about time, he deliberately made a little noise and threw a dozen feathers from the vampire's wings next to the corpses before he directly left. Bang, bang, bang. Bullets whizzed out as 7 or 8 armed men on guard fired in the direction where Tanshio left, and then hurriedly chased after him. Unfortunately, although their speed was fast, there was still a huge gap between them and Tanshio. They stopped chasing after him after they arrived near the corpses of the two dead armed men. A feather? One of them, a middle-aged man with a high status, picked up the feather and looked at it. The killing intent in his eyes turned more intense, and he rushed to the tent area almost without hesitation. What's the matter? More than a dozen leaders of various forces rushed out of the tent as the burly black man asked aloud. The middle-aged man came to the front of everyone and took out more than a dozen feathers in his hand. Then he quickly said, "Our men on guard duty in the periphery were sneakily attacked. We've just confirmed the number of people killed. There are a total of 12. I found these feathers next to the corpses of our men. They should be the feathers of a vampire. Bastards. They're going too far. They're too arrogant. Kill them. Revenge. The leaders of the various forces had a drastic change in expression as they roared furiously. They thought that the Stygian Club's people were like rats now, hiding and not daring to come out. Never did they expect that the Stygian Club's people would be so arrogant as to sneak attack their men in the dark. Kill. There was no consensus at first, but a consensus was reached in just a few minutes. Tomorrow morning, they would immediately take action and kill all the Stygian Club's members on Miss Source Island at all costs. After returning to the concealment array, Tanshio observed the situation on the Stygian Club's side through a high-powered telescope. Then he sat cross-legged on a bluestone and looked at the dozens of people, asking, "If my guess is correct, those forces won't be a match for the Stygian Club even if they join forces. If the Stygian Club's members don't suffer too many losses in the next battle, I'm afraid the pyramid won't directly take action. Can anyone think of a way to get the pyramid's people to participate in this?" "I have a way to deal with the pyramid's people," said Jinlei Duomo all of a sudden. "I don't need the pyramid's people to get involved." "Tell me quickly. What's the way?" Tanshio's spirit shook and he quickly asked. Chapter 747. A chilling glint flashed in Jinlei Duomo's eyes as she slowly said, "I carry a very terrifying laxative with me. As long as we can sneak this laxative into the meals of the Stygian Club's members, we can make them suffer from abdominal pain and crazily defecate. When the two sides fight, even if the Stygian Club's members try their best to fight back, it will greatly affect them and cause them to suffer huge losses." "Laxative? Will this laxative be useful to the divergent races?" asked Tanshio with a frown. "Absolutely." Jinlei Duomo nodded and said, "This laxative I got is very powerful. Even I will be affected if I take it, let alone those divergent races. As a matter of fact, I once fought a vampire marquis a few years ago, but I was defeated by him. To wash away my shame, I found that mysterious poison master and asked him to concoct this laxative for me. Later on, that vampire marquis almost had his intestines pulled out. In the end, I killed him directly even though I was weaker than him. It's indeed a good method, but the taste of the food doesn't taste right. I'm afraid those divergent races will easily notice it," said Tanshio. "The laxative I got won't," said Jinlei Duomo proudly. "It's colorless and tasteless, so it won't be noticed even if it's mixed into the food." Tanshio thought for a moment before he nodded and said, "Oh, go to the southeast and find out when those forces started to attack the Stygian Club's people. Jinlei Duomo, I need you to sneak into the Stygian Club's encampment and immediately put the laxative in their meals after receiving my message." "Understood. Understood." Oh, and Jinlei Duomo complied and left at an extremely fast speed. The next morning, when the red sun rose from the east, half of the sky illuminated Miss Source Island, making it look magnificent as though a gorgeous coat was draped over it. The total number of people from more than a dozen forces totaled more than 560 people as they aggressively stormed toward the Stygian Club's encampment. Near them, there were more than 20 experts who were very powerful and could no longer be considered ordinary humans. They quickly cleared the obstacles on the road and covered the large group of people as they entered the canyon. Half an hour ago, Jinlei Duomo had secretly put laxatives in the food of the Stygian Club's members. After half an hour of brewing, dozens of Stygian Club members felt a stomachache and severe diarrhea. Killing fighting. It could be triggered at any moment. As the most powerful man in the Stygian Club, Keithmore was also flustered by this sudden change. Nearly 600 people from the Allied forces charged into the canyon and charged through the array formation, launching fierce attacks one after another. On the northwest hillside, Tanshio watched the battle below with great interest. What he found very interesting was that the Stygian Club had a lot of experts. Not only were there a lot of vampires, werewolves, wingmen, and other beastmen, but facing the enemy's attack, they could only endure the diarrhea and launch a counterattack. Kill. It was carried out amidst the splattering of blood, and continued amidst the howls of pain. In another direction, the pyramid's wisdom war elder, Wuxia, had been waiting for a long time with dozens of experts from the pyramid. They didn't expect that the Stygian Club's experts would suffer from massive diarrhea. Wuxia, who wanted to be the fisherman who benefited from the fight between the fish and the clam, was stimulated by such a good thing. Get ready to join the battle at any time. Wuxia glanced at Bodit, who was standing straight next to him, and smilingly said while stroking his beard. Bodit, however, furrowed his brows and slowly said, "The situation is a bit special. If the people who secretly gave the Stygian Club's members laxatives are not from the Allied forces, then this matter is too strange. I suggest that we don't act rashly and wait for the battle to settle down before we directly act." Wuxia, who was also known as the Wisdom War Elder, nodded without hesitation. "We only need to surround the Stygian Club's encampment and wait for both sides to suffer. Then we'll clean up the mess. Everyone, get moving and pay attention to the attack signal. We'll immediately act as soon as we find it." Time passed by bit. After half an hour of fierce fighting, be it the Stygian Club or the joint forces of more than a dozen forces, all of them had paid a very heavy price. Among them, the burly black man was hit by a werewolf and suffered serious injuries. It was under such circumstances that the Alliance members began to feel fear, and were ready to find an opportunity to slip away. Stop them and activate the array. Seeing that the enemy was gradually losing, Keithmore didn't hesitate to issue the order with intense killing intent. As the 4 vampire counts attacked one after another, the array was activated and the blood poison was released. Aargh. Shrill screams came out of the Allied forces experts' mouths. Moreover, after this shrill scream, more screams started to ring out one after another. "Break the array and kill the enemy," one of the Caucasian leaders roared as he dashed towards a vampire count. However, the vampire count killed the Caucasian leader with a single strike. A few of the Caucasian men around him, who had been firing their guns at the Caucasian leader, were killed by the blood poison. A life for a life. A skinny, dark-skinned young man in the Alliance army had his back torn open by a werewolf's sharp claws. The moment blood flowed out, he suddenly stuck his fingers into his eye sockets and forcefully gouged out his eyeballs. As blood gushed out, he let out a shrill, blood-curdling scream. A cloud of black smoke that was as black as ink spread from his body, forming a black fog tornado like a hurricane. A large amount of blood splattered beside the corpses on the ground. But at this moment, the blood seemed to have been summoned by something and quickly flowed toward him before finally fusing with the black fog tornado. Boom! In just a few breaths, a tens of meters tall black fog tornado was formed. The moment the skinny young man's body exploded, a mushroom cloud resembling a nuclear bomb exploded, and instantly turned several Stygian Club werewolves and vampires into a bloody mist, while 7 to 8 Allied forces were also killed in an instant. On the ground, the blood array was broken and the blood poison dispersed. The crazy killing continued, and the Stygian Club's members eventually retreated amidst sharp roars as their losses increased. They originally had 50 to 60 people, but only less than 20 of them were left after the retreat. The Allied forces were even more miserable. Less than 200 people survived out of the nearly 600 people, and more than half of them were badly wounded. In the northwest direction, Tanshio stood at the edge of the concealment array and looked at the tragic scene below. His heart was as calm as still water. The killing scene in front of him was common and not surprising at all. However, Mo and the others, including the ruthless Jinlei Duomo, had a slight change in expression. They were all ruthless characters with hands stained with blood. Many of them had climbed out of the pile of corpses many times, but most of the battles they had in the past relied on firearms. It was far from the excitement of close combat where flesh and blood splattered everywhere. "Boss, are we going to act?" Mo glanced at Tanshio and asked in a low voice. He was secretly surprised by Tanshio's calmness. He really couldn't figure out whether Tanshio was too ruthless, or what he had experienced in the past. Tanshio shook his head indifferently and said, "The most important protagonist of today hasn't appeared yet. What's the point of us acting now? Don't worry. Let's wait and see. I'm sure the scene will be more exciting after the protagonist appears." Mo's expression moved and he hesitantly asked, "You mean the pyramid?" "Speaking of which, the pyramid is the largest organization in the world," said Tanshio with a smile. The Stygian Club is at best an amalgamation of various forces, but the pyramid is different. It's a whole entity and has a very good operation, be it in the face of enemies or development. Just wait and see. The pyramid's wisdom war elder will probably thank us for the arrangement. Why? Mo was confused and asked. The sandpiper and the clam fight and the fisherman benefits, said Tan Xiao indifferently. Don't tell me he doesn't thank us for our painstaking arrangement? Mo suddenly understood and chuckled. Boss, I don't think it's appropriate to describe it as the sandpiper and the clam fight and the fisherman benefits. It's better to describe it as the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Because behind the oriole, there's still the hunter. We're the final winner. The hunter. How could there be so many twists and turns? Tan Xiao couldn't help but laugh. Ha! The protagonist is coming. Mo and the others' expressions shifted, and they quickly looked towards the distance. From the southeast, 50 to 60 figures flickered lightning fast toward the coalition forces of various forces. Some of them even chased after the Stygian Club's retreat. Just as the Stygian Club's 5 vampires and 3 or 4 wingmen were flying in the air, and were about to retreat to the top of the mountain in the north, a series of gunshots accompanied by bullets were heard, blocking their escape route. Say, 3 old men exuding surging auras led more than a dozen able-bodied ability users to soar from behind the hilltop. They unleashed their special abilities, causing lightning to wreak havoc and hurricanes to appear out of nowhere. Water dragons bared their fangs and brandished their claws, while sharp metal blades blotted out the sky. Fire. The air was as though a prairie fire was burning crazily. A deep and dignified voice sounded as several wingmen were shrouded in raging flames. The vampires were nearly roasted by the fire as they crazily fell down. The War Elder of Wisdom, Wuxia, wielded a golden scepter and stepped on a fiery cloud as he instantly swept past 2 vampire counts. It looked like a casual strike, but the 2 vampire counts were directly killed. You fucking bastard, Wuxia. Keithmore's figure finally shot over from afar. His billowing voice was deafening and contained boundless anger. A thin old man next to the War Elder of Wisdom burst into laughter. You're the one who deserves to die, Keithmore. I didn't kill you back then, but I won't show you any mercy today. Hurricane Myriad Slash. Chapter 748. Even if there was no earth-shaking and earth-shattering scene in the fight between real powerhouses, it still made people's hearts tremble inexplicably. The majestic momentum, the murderous blade lights and sword shadows, the bloody rain, and the foul wind made even the experts of the everlasting feast hall slightly change their expressions. They're so strong. Zhenlei Duomo watched the scene of Wisdom War Elder Wuxia, Keithmore, and the others fighting in midair. The shock inside her was like a surging tide. She thought that she was already very strong, but she didn't expect that there would be such a big gap between her and these powerhouses from the Stygian Club and Pyramid. Suddenly, Zhenlei Duomo's eyes moved away from the fight and landed on Tan Xiao's indifferent expression. She hesitantly asked, Mr. Tang, I know that you're stronger than me, but compared to them, who's stronger and who's weaker? I may not be as good as them if it's a friendly match, said Tan Xiao indifferently. But if it's a desperate fight, their chance of survival will be less than 1%. Zhenlei Duomo shuddered inwardly. She didn't think that Tan Xiao was just talking nonsense. Facing such a bloody and crazy fight at this moment, where there was a possibility of fighting at any time, bragging was tantamount to courting death. Tan Xiao glanced at Zhenlei Duomo, and then shifted his gaze back to the fight. Along with the crazy fight ahead, the ordinary humans had already left the battlefield. Many of them didn't know that vampires and ability users existed in this world. Facing these legendary and terrifying monsters, they didn't even have the thought to pull the trigger of their guns. Tan Xiao's expression suddenly changed as he watched the fight. In the air a few kilometers away from them, Wuxia and Bodit were both injured, but their combat strength was still very strong. But Keithmore and his subordinates were different. Except for the 2 vampires, Basil and Ality, the other 2 had died in battle. What made Tang Xiao's expression change was that the 3 vampires, Keithmore, Basil, and Ality, who were in a disadvantageous position, desperately pushed back Wuxia and Bodit, and then rushed towards his direction. Tanxio's eyes were like torches. He could even clearly determine where Keith Moore and the other two had landed. They were in the vicinity of the concealment array. Once Wuxia and Bodit caught up to them and started fighting in the vicinity, the concealment formation would be affected, and they would be exposed. "Awu, give me a mask," Tanxio said in a deep voice. Mo quickly took out 2 bronze masks from his space ring, and handed one to Tanxio before quickly putting one on himself. Jin Shi and the others also grabbed the bronze masks they carried with them and quickly put them on. Only Jinlei Duomo looked at Tanxio and the others in confusion. She wanted to say something but hesitated. Tanxio said, "Give one to Jinlei Duomo." "All right." Mo glared at Jinlei Duomo, but in the end he still took out one and gave it to her. Wind Tide, dressed in a green robe and holding a red crystal stick in his hand, Bodit frantically waved his crystal stick. As he rapidly chased after them, he constantly slashed out wind blades. The entire world in front of him was filled with hundreds and thousands of wind blades as he chased after the afterimages left behind by Keith Moore and the other two. When a large number of trees on the hillside were ravaged by the wind blades and fell to the ground, Keith Moore, Basil, and Aladi were already less than 100 meters away from the concealment array, where Tanxio and the others were hiding. "Our targets are the 2 vampires who had previously fled." Tanxio instantly unleashed his longsword. As the other party was getting closer, his figure instantly disappeared and directly appeared in front of Keith Moore. The violent sword slash was as though it could tear the space barrier apart. Energy swarmed in from all directions, forming a terrifying killing move. What? Keith Moore's complexion drastically changed. Never once did he expect that there would be an ambush in front of him. What made him most afraid was that the other party seemed to have appeared out of thin air without any warning. Swoosh! The sword light swept across and cut off one of Keith Moore's wings in an instant. Along with his painful howl, 2 sword lights appeared out of thin air, and pierced through his abdomen and waist before sinking into Basil's and Aladi's chests. Aladi and Basil were both injured and caught off guard by the sneak attack. Even though the attack had avoided their hearts, it left 2 hideous bloody wounds on their bodies. At this moment, Basil and Aladi, the 2 natives vampires, felt as if they had just survived a disaster. Just as they were about to muster all their strength to escape from this place, another 8 flying swords came shooting at them. Puff puff. The 8 flying swords pierced through their bodies, causing blood to blossom. In despair, Basil and Aladi's bodies fell down. The moment they hit the ground, they died completely because their cores were shattered. Tanxio didn't pay attention to Basil and Aladi, but appeared next to Keith more like a shadow. As he cast a seal, wind, thunder and lightning flashed, forming a terrifying scene that instantly enveloped Keith Moore. The long sword flying next to Tanxio instantly pierced Keith Moore's head. Boom! The moment Keith Moore was seriously injured, Tanxio fiercely punched his chest. Although the powerful force didn't shatter his core, it still sent him flying upside down. Chop! The long sword slashed down, piercing Keith Moore's heart from his left shoulder, and even splitting his right leg in half. 4 to 5 seconds passed. It only took 4 to 5 seconds for Tanxio and the others to appear from the concealment array to the assassination. However, Keith Moore, who was extremely powerful and had a very high status in the Stygian Club, and his 2 men Basil and Aladi, were killed. "Who are you?" Wuxia trod on the void, surrounded by raging flames. He spread his arms to stop the pursuing pyramid experts behind him, and glared at Tanxio and the others as he shouted. Tanxio sneered. After gathering with Mo and the others, he glared at Wuxia and said, "You actually dare to ask who we are after causing trouble in my Huaxia's territory? To think that you're hailed as the pyramid's wisdom war elder. I think you're just stupid." Huaxia? Cultivators? Wujia's body trembled. He instantly raised the golden scepter and said in a deep voice, "You killed the Stygian Club's people. It has nothing to do with our pyramid. There's an old adage that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Let's join hands to destroy all the Stygian Club's experts on Miss Source Island. We can be considered friends, right? We can be friends if your pyramid's people immediately leave Miss Source Island." Tanxio sneered. But if you continue to covet the resources of Miss Source Island and want to invade our territory, then you're our enemy. You mean you want to represent the Wuxia government? Wuxia frowned. We're the Wuxia government's people, so we can naturally represent them, Tan Xiu replied coldly. Miss Source Island is Wuxia's territory, a territory we haven't opened to the outside world. You trespassing here is tantamount to trespassing our territory. Hence, I'm giving you a chance to leave. But if you still want to stay here, you won't end up better than the Stygian Club's people. At Wujia's side, Bodit's eyes gleamed with dense killing intent. Before Wujia could speak, he had already pounced toward Tan Xiu. You're courting death. Mo Ao and the others rushed out and controlled their flying swords to fight Bodit. Tan Xiu waved his hand and threw out 24 array discs. As his hands drew in the air, the Star Brilliance array was arranged in just a few breaths. Along with the instantaneous activation, Wujia's expression drastically changed, and he flashed back 100 meters. Fortunately, he was able to escape the Star Brilliance array the moment it was activated, while Bodit directly appeared inside the array. Retreat! I'm going to kill him. Tan Xiu's figure moved and appeared at the array's eye as he shouted aloud. In a flash, Mo Ao and the others could clearly hear Tan Xiu's voice transmission to them, pointing them to the direction to leave the Star Brilliance array. As they left the Star Brilliance array, Tan Xiu manipulated the array to make the Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise appear out of thin air, and surrounded Bodit from 4 directions. Kill him. Following Tan Xiu's order, the 4 divine beasts unleashed their respective supernatural abilities and constantly launched fierce attacks at Bodit. Bodit's strength was very formidable, and he was even stronger than Tan Xiu in his heyday. However, the Star Brilliance array that Tan Xiu had set up was based on the principles of the 24 constellations array diagram. Moreover, he had added a lot of Tan Xiu's own understanding of array formations, making the Star Brilliance array even more powerful. Just the Star Brilliance array alone was enough to bring Bodit great danger. Coupled with Tan Xiu's control, Bodit was surrounded by perils for a while, and almost lost his life at the hands of the 4 divine beasts several times. 100 meters away, Wujia looked at the void in front of him with a face full of fear. He could feel a huge amount of energy constantly being drawn from all directions, and eventually forming a special space. He stood outside but could not see anything inside. There was no Tan Xiu or Bodit. Wujia knew that Tan Xiu must have used some kind of method to trap Bodit inside. It was even very likely that Bodit was under great threat at this moment. Wujia pondered for a while and suddenly said, "Little friend, how about we talk?" Inside the Star Brilliance array, Tan Xiu's face suddenly turned cold when he heard the word little friend. Almost in an instant, the surging primal chaos force in his body poured out. In just a few breaths, the 4 divine beasts' bodies nearly doubled in size, and the power of the Star Brilliance array multiplied. Bodit narrowly avoided the Azure Dragon's sweeping tail, but the White Tiger's sharp claws tore open a bloody wound on his back. Before the crisis was over, the Vermilion Bird's flames burned his body, and the Black Tortoise slammed its head into Bodit's chest, causing his sternum to be smashed. Die. Tan Xiu's figure instantly disappeared from the eye of the array. When the longsword turned into a stream of light and pierced through Bodit's chest, Tan Xiu's figure appeared in front of Bodit. He did not give him a chance to dodge and punched him in the head. Blood splattered. A one-hit kill. Brothers and sisters, please support us with your monthly votes. Chapter 749. Buzz. A strange melody instantly spread and a hazy figure appeared outside the Star Brilliance great array out of thin air. Tan Xiu grabbed Bodit's head and appeared in front of Wujia with a murderous aura. Bodit. Wujia was horrified and involuntarily exclaimed. He never dreamed that Bodit would be killed in such a short time. An array? The legendary array that cultivators from the Middle East are good at? Wujia recalled the records he had read in the ancient books, and his heart suddenly twitched a few times. Although they had explored some mineral resources in Miss Source Island this time, they didn't excavate them at all. They had just planned to take root in Miss Source Island and set up a secret base for the pyramid, yet they had suffered such a huge loss before they could even start to implement it. We've lost everything and suffered heavy losses. Although Wu Jie was full of unwillingness, he was perfectly aware that his plan to lead the team to Miss Source Island would most likely fail. Tan Xiu looked at Wu Jie's constantly changing expression and said in a deep voice, "You're lucky to be able to escape from my array, or Elder Wu Jie. But I can tell you that luck only comes once. If you insist on having your way and still want to stay on Miss Source Island, then this Miss Source Island will be your burial ground." Wu Jie hated Tan Xiu because Bodit was his closest companion. Now that he died in Tan Xiu's hands, this blood feud must be avenged. However, he was also well aware of one thing. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. As long as there's life, there's hope. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge 10 years later. In an instant. "Give me Bodit's body and I'll immediately leave Miss Source Island with my men," said Wu Jie in a deep voice. "Understood." Tan Xiu happily returned Bodit's body to Wu Jie, and personally led his men to follow Wu Jie, and the others to evacuate. Just as they left the white mist area, Tan Xiu coldly snorted and said, "Keep in mind that I won't welcome your people from the pyramid in the future. Kill one if you find one, and kill two if you find two." "May I know your name, mister?" asked Wu Jie in a deep voice. Tan Xiu sneered and said, "You're not qualified to know my name. If the people of the pyramid obediently stay in your hometown, I might not take the initiative to find trouble with you. Otherwise, I don't mind bringing some people to your place." Wu Jie said grimly, "See you later." Finished. He quickly boarded a passenger ship with the people from the pyramid, and soon disappeared into the distant sea. Tan Xiu turned his head to look at Mo Ao and said, "Take some men to clean up the people from the other forces on Miss Source Island. Remember, don't leave anyone alive and kill them all. Jinlei Duomo, cooperate with Ao and the others. We must solve these problems as soon as possible." Jinlei Duomo quickly said, "Mr. Tang, isn't it too crazy to kill all the people from the other forces on Miss Source Island? You should know that those forces are not to be underestimated. If they—" Tan Xiu raised his hand to interrupt Jinlei Duomo and coldly snorted, "Since I dared to kill them, I'm not afraid of their revenge. Do as I say." Jinlei Duomo was silent for a moment, and then nodded helplessly. She knew that Tan Xiu was very strong and had more than a dozen cultivators under him. But it was definitely not a wise move to go against so many huge foreign forces. At this moment, she suddenly despised Tan Xiu a lot. Miss Source Island Military Base. After returning here, Tan Xiu met with Divine Dr. Gue Jianqiu as fast as possible. He learned that the doctor had discovered the principle of the darkening virus, and was now going all out to concoct an antidote. As a matter of fact, Tan Xiu was well aware of his own limitations. His attainments in Chinese medicine were simply incomparable to Gue Jianqiu. The reason why he could treat so many difficult and complicated diseases was entirely due to his cultivation methods. "Do you need my help?" asked Tan Xiu while looking at Gue Jianqiu's tired but still busy figure. "No need for the time being." Gue Jianqiu shook his head and said, "If the antidote I've researched still can't completely solve the darkening virus problem by noon tomorrow, I'll find another solution. I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you then." Tan Xiu nodded. After leaving the temporary research institute, he saw Yang Chuxiong in a military uniform rushing over with several officers. "Division Commander Yang, I need your help." Tan Xiu had a plan in mind, so he spoke directly. "What do you need us to do, Mr. Tang?" asked Yang Chuxiong quickly. "Contact the leaders in the country. The higher the better," said Tan Xiu. "I think it'll be much easier if you can pass my needs to the number one leader." Yang Chuxiong's expression slightly changed and asked, "Why do you need to contact the number one leader?" "I need jades, a lot of raw materials that haven't been carved," said Tan Xiu. "The situation in Miss Source Island is very special, but some people can still come in easily. I'm going to arrange a powerful array around the island. Unless it's someone who knows how to get in and out of the array, no outsider can break in." "Array?" Yang Chuxiong was surprised. "You mean the means of those ancient geomancy warlocks? Do you know how to arrange the Qimen Duanjia?" "I know a bit about it," said Tan Xiu with a nod. "In fact, it's very easy to get raw jades." Yang Chuxiong hesitated. As long as the higher-ups approve it, I believe they'll be sent here soon. But once you arrange that kind of array, won't it be troublesome? Miss Source Island may not have much contact with the outside world, but it's not completely isolated. In case. I know what you're thinking. Tanshio interrupted him. Actually, I have a very good suggestion. Since the country wants to hide the existence of Miss Source Island, then we can seal the entire island. We can set up an entrance and an exit in 2 places on Miss Source Island. Just like the airport security check. We can set up a special department, and only the people from this department can open the passage and provide access services. Yang Chuxiong's eyes turned brighter and brighter as he listened to Tanshio's words. In the end, he couldn't help but slap the table and praise it. If it could really be done as Tanshio said, then there would be no need to worry about foreign forces sneaking into Miss Source Island in the future. Enter Miss Source Island, register, and let them in. Leave Miss Source Island, register, and let them out. Establish a perfect traffic order and control the flow of people in and out. The most important thing was that once this method was completed, the country could truly control Miss Source Island in the truest sense. Yang Chuxiong excitedly rubbed his hands and suddenly asked, Mr. Tang, what's the effect of the Chiman Duanjia you arranged? Can it kill the enemy? I've watched the TV series Generals of the Yang family, and the Skygate array in it is very powerful. There are some arrays that can kill the enemy, but the one I want to arrange is mainly for defense, said Tanshio with a strange expression. However, it's not impossible to make the array play an offensive role. It's just that the number of jades needed to be consumed will probably increase greatly. Yang Chuxiong clapped his hands and loudly said, the jades don't matter. As long as it can kill the enemy, we don't need to worry even if foreign forces come to Miss Source Island again. They can't sneak in, and it's even more impossible for them to kill their way in. Only this level can be regarded as impregnable. Tanshio snickered inwardly. The reason why he proposed to arrange the array with jades was actually because of his own selfishness. If he wanted to get a lot of jades, buying them with his own money was just a small way. If the country could help, the amount of jades would definitely be more than what he could get with his own money. Some people were embezzling money, but he himself was embezzling jades. Precisely speaking, it wasn't actually embezzlement, but some returns after paying. After all, he had to painstakingly arrange the array. Seeing that Yang Chuxiong was about to leave, Tanshio quickly stopped him and said, Division Commander Yang, can we have a private chat? I've done something on Miss Source Island and need to report it to you. Yang Chuxiong stared blankly for a moment, and immediately asked the officers around him to leave. Then he curiously asked, What did you do, Mr. Tang? There are 2 main things, said Tanshio. First, I've dealt with all the forces who sneaked into Miss Source Island. Except for the pyramid who lost a group of people and was expelled by me. I've sent my men to kill all the other forces. Hiss, Yang Chuxiong, who had been through hundreds of battles and had personally killed many people, couldn't help but gasp when he heard Tanshio's words. One must know. Those foreign forces had sent a lot of people to Miss Source Island. If all of them were added up, it would be at least 800, if not 1,000. This Tanshio was really ruthless and merciless. Also, I've encountered some thugs on Miss Source Island. When the infectious disease threatened the general public, some of them brutally killed people and even tortured them to death, said Tanshio again. My men also killed some of those who lost their minds, but their corpses were handled very well, leaving no traces behind. Yang Chuxiong nodded and said, That's your authority. There's indeed no need to show mercy to those thugs. We're in a crisis now, yet those people dared to commit crimes. I'll bring them to justice if I encounter them. I'm relieved since Division Commander Yang can understand, said Tanshio. That's right, I'm going to take my men to walk around and have a look around, so I won't be staying in the base. Just contact me directly if there's any news about the array and the jade. No problem. Yang Chuxiong happily replied. Just as Tanshio was about to leave, he suddenly turned his head and said, Division Commander Yang, there's something I need to tell you. When we were dealing with those foreign forces, we found that the Stygian Club's people had a conflict with the Qingyuan Group's big boss, Miao Hengfu. Miao Hongfu and many of his men were killed by the Stygian club's people. Yang Chuxiong stared blankly and immediately let out a bitter smile. It's troublesome. Tan Xiu was surprised and asked, what kind of troublesome? Isn't he just the boss of a company? How come you, the garrison's first commander, find it troublesome? Chapter 750. Yang Chuxiong looked around and found no one around. Then he bitterly said, Mr. Tang, you probably don't know about it yet. This Miao Hongfu has a rich background, and he's from the Mu family in the imperial capital. Now that he's killed, that person from the Mu family will never let this go. This, alas. I have some connections with some people from the Mu family. Who's that person you're talking about? Tan Xiu deliberately asked. Mu Jianhua. Yang Chuxiong replied in a low voice. You mean, Miao Hongfu's backer is Mu Jianhua? Tan Xiu was surprised. Yeah. Yang Chuxiong nodded. Mu Jianhua of the Mu family may be a good-for-nothing, but he's still a member of the Mu family, and his father is the current patriarch of the Mu family. I'm afraid it'll be very troublesome if he makes a fuss. An idiot? Tan Xiu's mouth twitched and he helplessly said. Division Commander Yang, I'll be frank with you. This idiot is actually my future father-in-law. What? Yang Chuxiong was dumbfounded. My girlfriend is Mu Weining, and her father is Mu Jianhua, said Tan Xiu. That's why this idiot is my future father-in-law. Cough, cough. Yang Chuxiong coughed twice with an awkward expression. He wished he could find a hole to bury himself in. Though he despised Mu Jianhua, he had some admiration for Tan Xiu. Yet he dared to curse Tan Xiu's future father-in-law in front of him. This was really shameful. Tan Xiu let out a faint smile and said, Division Commander Yang, you don't need to take it to heart. Besides, Mu Jianhua is Mu Jianhua, and my girlfriend is my girlfriend. Let's not talk about this anymore. Since the person behind the Qingyuan group is one of us, then I'll help you clean up this mess. Yang Chuxiong let out a hollow laugh and quickly said, You can do whatever you want, Mr. Tang. The Qingyuan group's business is booming on the surface, but there are some dirty businesses behind the scenes. If it wasn't for Mu, that person from the Mu family supporting us from behind, we would have dealt with Miao Hongfu a long time ago. Tan Xiu instantly understood Yang Chuxiong's meaning. A smile outlined on the corner of his mouth as he nodded and said, I see. Rest assured, Division Commander Yang. In the future, the Qingyuan group would never have anything to do with any shady business again. I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. Qingyuan group. When Tan Xiu arrived with Jin Shi and Xue Xia, they were stopped by several security guards before they could enter the company's gate. Even the security guards were very rude. This is my ID. Tang Xiu took out the green book and saw that the security guards' complexions greatly changed. Their attitude also took a 180-degree turn. He immediately snorted coldly and said, Don't tell anyone who we are. Continue your work. Saying, he walked inside. After entering the building at the front, Tan Xiu found two young female receptionists playing with their mobile phones at the counter, and several energetic men and women in suits gathered together to discuss something. Strange, they didn't prepare any electrostatic equipment here. Jin Shi, who was at Tan Xiu's side, couldn't help but mutter. Tan Xiu furrowed his brows and came to the counter, saying, I'm from the government. I'll have to trouble you to inform the Qingyuan group's top executives to come to the conference room within half an hour. The two female receptionists observed Tan Xiu's group of three. Then one of them shook her head and said with a charming smile, Please don't tease us, sir. We would have gotten the news long ago if someone from the government came to inspect our work. Also, our boss isn't here, so you can wait for him to come back. Gather all the Qingyuan group's top executives except your boss in the conference room, said Tan Xiu in a deep voice. This is my ID. If you obstruct my work, it will be considered an illegal act. The two female receptionists looked at the green book. They didn't know what this ID meant. After hesitating for a while, the woman said, We don't have the right to do so, sir. How about we inform Chief Li? He's the vice president of our Qingyuan group, so you can talk to him first. All right. Tan Xiu nodded. A few minutes later, a middle-aged man in his 40s came to the hall on the first floor with two youths. After observing Tan Xiu's group of three, he said, "I'm Li Hemming, the vice president of the Qingyuan group. May I ask who you are?" After Tan Xiu showed him the ID, he said in a deep voice, "You should know what this ID of mine represents since you can become the vice president of the Qingyuan group. Now, I order you to immediately summon all the Qingyuan group's top executives to the conference room for a meeting. As for your boss, you don't need to wait for him." Li Hemming's complexion was a bit pale. Although he had never seen the Green Book, he had heard about what the three words on it represented. After quickly nodding, he walked a few steps to the side and called his big boss, Miao Hongfu's number. What gave him a headache was that his big boss didn't answer at all. In the conference room on the third floor, nearly everyone except the Qingyuan group's big boss, Miao Hongfu, had arrived within half an hour. More than 20 people were sitting on both sides of the long conference table, with indifferent expressions on their faces. Usually, only the big boss was qualified to sit on the chairs, whispering to each other. "Is everyone here, Li Hemming?" asked Tan Xiu as soon as the time was up. "Yes, everyone is here," answered Li Hemming. Tan Xiu slightly nodded, and his sharp eyes swept over the faces of more than 20 people. Then he said in a deep voice, "I'll make an announcement now." The Qingyuan group's boss, Miao Hongfu, his only son Miao Wenlei, and dozens of security guards of the security department have all died due to a conflict with some foreign forces. I've investigated Miao Hongfu's relatives. Aside from his only son Miao Wenlei, he only has parents who are over 70 years old. His parents are obviously not suitable to take over the Qingyuan group's business, so you now face two choices. The first one is to resign and leave the Qingyuan group to find a better job elsewhere. Also, look for a new investor to convert Miao Hongfu's shares into cash and let his parents inherit it. Li Hemming was dumbfounded, as were the more than 20 Qingyuan group's top executives in the conference room. They stared at Tan Xiu, dumbfounded and tongue-tied, with disbelief in their eyes. Their big boss is dead? The news was like a clap of thunder in everyone's ears, leaving them at a loss for a while. After a long while, Li Hemming's lips squirmed and he said in a low voice, "Mr. Tang, the entire Qingyuan group belongs to our boss. He owns 100% of the shares." Tan Xiu had already sent some people to investigate this matter before he came to the Qingyuan group, so how could he not know about it at this moment? Looking at everyone's shocked faces, Tan Xiu indifferently said, "Since Miao Hongfu is dead and his parents are not suitable to run the Qingyuan group, then I'll make the decision. I'll give some money to Miao Hongfu's parents and let the state settle them down so that they can enjoy their old age in peace. The state will own a part of the Qingyuan group shares, 51%. Apart from Li Hemming, the rest of you will each get 1% of the shares. The remaining 25% of the shares will be invested into the Qingyuan group." After saying that, Tan Xiu asked in a deep voice, "Do you have any objections?" Li Hemming's pupils shrunk and a glint flashed in his eyes. At this moment, how could he not see that Tan Xiu was representing the state to occupy Miao Hongfu's business? Upon seeing the excitement on the faces of the other senior executives who got 1% of the shares, Li Hemming's heart tightened. He looked at Tan Xiu and said, "Mr. Tang, they have 22 people in total, so they will get 22% of the shares," said Tan Xiu. "You will get 3% of the shares and will be the general manager of the Qingyuan group from now on. As for your annual salary, it will remain unchanged." 3%? Nearly 100 million yuan? Li Hemming was delighted and nodded. "I have no problem with that." Tan Xiu nodded in satisfaction. He then took out his communicator in front of everyone, dialed Mu Weiniang's cell number, and directly pressed the speakerphone button. "Hello, Tan Xiu." Mu Weiniang's voice came from the communicator, and was clearly heard by everyone in the conference room. "Weiniang, how much money can your company take out now?" asked Tan Xiu. "What I mean is, how much spare money can you take out without affecting the normal operation of your company?" Mu Weiniang hesitated for a moment before saying, "The clients you introduced to me last time have increased the scale of my company by more than 10 times. And the income is also very considerable. I've checked the financial situation a few days ago. so it shouldn't be a problem for me to take out 250 million yuan. 250 million then, said Tan Xiao. I'll introduce another business to you. You should know about the Miss Source Islands Qingyuan Group, right? Your father, Mu Jianhua, has a deep relationship with the big boss of the Qingyuan Group, Miao Hengfu. Now that Miao Hengfu and his son are dead, you can use 250 million yuan to invest in the Qingyuan Group. You'll own 25% of the shares. What? Miao Hengfu is dead? Mu Weiniang's voice came again. That's right. He's dead, said Tan Xiao. I'm handling this matter on behalf of the government. But my father. Mu Weiniang quickly said. Tang Xiao interrupted her and said, I don't care about your dad, but I can take care of you. Come to Miss Source Island in person later. The Qingyuan Group's vice president, Li Heming, as well as the Miss Source Islands officials, will fully cooperate with you to carry out the equity change. This all right. Tan Xiao hung up the phone and looked at the shocked faces of more than 20 Qingyuan Group's top executives. Then he lightly said, I don't need to explain it too clearly. I'm sure you all know who Mu Weiniang is. Miao Hengfu may be dead, but the Qingyuan Group won't fall. I hope that you won't speak about this matter before the equity change is completed. Even if the equity change is completed, you'd better remember what you can and cannot say. Else, I'll take back everything you own. And I'll even make you pay more. We understand. The faces of more than 20 top executives of the company slightly changed as they nodded with a solemn expression. Chapter 751. After solving the Qingya Group's problem, Tan Xiao directly chose to leave. The reason why the Chinese leaders sent him to Miss Source Island this time was very clear. To solve the darkening virus problem and maintain the safety of Miss Source Island's people. Of these two problems, the first one was handled by divine Dr. Gui Jianqiu, so he didn't need to worry too much about it. As for the second one, he had solved most of it, which was to clean up the foreign forces. What he needed to do next was to maintain the safety of Miss Source Island's people, and deal with all those who took advantage of the situation or maliciously spread extreme propaganda, causing panic among the people. Most importantly, all the criminals who caused the riots must be dealt with in this desperate situation. It could be said that Miss Source Island's police system had been completely paralyzed. The policemen infected with the darkening virus were already too busy to take care of themselves, so how could they have the time to worry about the people's safety? Hence, there was no way to count on them. Boss, I feel that something is amiss. At the entrance of the Qingyuan Group, Jin Shi frowned and spoke to Tan Xiao the moment he sat in the car. What's wrong? Asked Tan Xiao. It took us 2 hours and 45 minutes to leave the Qingyuan Group, boss, said Jin Shi. We were in the conference room for 2 hours. We weren't infected by the darkening virus because we're cultivators and can release our true essence to block the virus. The top executives of the Qingyuan Group all showed signs of being infected, but they didn't use static electricity to suppress the darkening virus in their bodies. I think there's something wrong somewhere. Tan Xiao's expression suddenly changed after hearing this. He had ignored this problem just now and didn't expect that Jin Shi would notice it. After secretly blaming himself, Tan Xiao immediately said, Contact Li Heming and tell him to come here at once. Understood. Jin Shi replied. A few minutes later, Li Heming arrived in a hurry. His eyes flashed when he saw the license plate of the car Tan Xiao took. White background, black characters, and red letters. It was a military license plate. Li Heming's eyes fell on Tan Xiao inside the window. His posture instantly turned lower as he respectfully came outside the window and bowed, saying, What's your order, Mr. Tang? Tan Xiao asked. What's going on with this Qingyuan Group? Everyone was infected with the darkening virus. Why didn't anyone use electrostatic suppression? Li Heming hurriedly said, There is an electrostatic discharge device installed in the company. This is boss. This is something Miao Hengfu bought from a group of foreigners. The static electricity covers the entire company, so all the employees in the company don't need anything that produces static electricity. Electrostatic discharger? Tan Xiao was shocked. He didn't expect such a thing to exist. After pondering for a moment, he immediately asked, What's the maximum coverage area of this electrostatic discharger? What I mean is, can it cover the entire Mist Source Island? I asked Miao Hengfu about this issue. Li Heming shook his head and said, the electrostatic discharger used by our Qingyuan group should be the most effective one in the world. Yet it can only cover a radius of a few kilometers. In the past, this kind of electrostatic discharger would be useless. Not only would it not be of much help to humans, but it would also cause great harm to human health. Tan Xiao nodded without a word. He felt that what Li Heming said made sense. After pondering for a moment, he slowly asked, can we still buy this electrostatic discharger? I don't know. Li Heming shook his head and said, Miao Hengfu was the one who bought the electrostatic discharger, and he seems to have spent a lot of money on it. However, I know their origin. They are from the Micronesian Federation. Tan Xiao nodded helplessly. He knew this group of people, but they had been slaughtered by the Stygian Club's people. How could he still buy electrostatic dischargers from them? As he thought about it, he recalled that divine Dr. Gui Jianqiu said that there would be some progress on the antidote by noon tomorrow. Tan Xiao silently suppressed the idea of buying electrostatic dischargers on a large scale. Is there a relatively quiet place in the company? I want to settle some people here. How many people exactly, Mr. Tang? Asked Li Heming. Tan Xiao pondered for a moment before he finally shook his head and said, forget it. In any case, the antidote for the darkening virus can be researched tomorrow. There's no need to go through so much trouble. He originally wanted to ask Tang Han to bring her confidants here, but he eventually gave up on it. He didn't want outsiders to know about his relationship with Tang Han for the time being. The Qingyuan group had too many people, and it would be easy to expose their relationship. Tang Manor Martial Arts School. Tan Xiao left the Qingyuan group and went straight to this place. Early the next morning, Mo Ao and the others hurried over and informed them that they had eliminated all the remaining people from the foreign forces. It's peaceful now, boss. With a relaxed expression, Mo Ao smilingly looked at Tan Xiao, who was sitting on the sofa and smoking. The peace you're referring to is the result of eliminating the foreign forces, said Tan Xiao indifferently. But the real peace is far from being achieved. The darkening virus has infected all the people in the entire Mist Source Island, causing great panic among the people. Some people with bad intentions have fanned the flames and spread the public opinion that the world should be destroyed. Some people have even done a lot of extreme things during this period. Besides, although the darkening virus has been temporarily suppressed, it will cause panic among the people as long as it hasn't been solved. The longer it drags on, the more chaos it will cause. You mean? Asked Mo Ah hesitantly. The 12 of us will be divided into 6 teams. 4 of them will rush to the 4 major cities of Python City, Wolfpack City, Twin Brook City, and Mixed Summit City to maintain the order of the residents, said Tan Xiao. Those who have bad intentions or do extreme things will be executed on the spot. The other 2 teams will have to work hard to patrol the villages and towns of Mist Source Island. All right. Mo A's reply was very straightforward. My men and I will also join little brother, said Tang Han hurriedly. Besides, we're very familiar with Mist Source Island, so we can help you in the operation. No problem, said Tan Xiao with a smile. You no longer have the threat of the darkening virus, so it's not a big problem for you to help us. However, I need all of you to change your makeup so that no one can recognize you as members of the Tang Manor Martial School. How do we change our makeup? Asked Tang Han. Don't worry, Tan Xiao said with a smile. I have a way. Disguise and disguise. It was a piece of cake for Mo Ao and the others. In their earlier years of training abroad, they had long mastered the use of these methods. Mist Source Island. The stability of the 4 major cities was indeed not good. Although the initial small-scale unrest was suppressed by the police with an iron fist, there were still many people with ulterior motives who were ready to destroy the state of affairs. Even some extreme people were sharpening their knives. They couldn't bear the virus infection and death, so they brandished their knives at others. Now, there was no large-scale unrest, but there was a lot of chaos in small areas. Twin Brook City. Huimin Supermarket in a district. Dozens of youths with knives and sticks in their hands smashed the supermarket's door and swarmed inside. Although there wasn't much cash in the supermarket's cashier, the dazzling array of goods in the supermarket was very valuable. These people crazily scrambled to find high-priced goods and filled their pockets. "All of you, stop!" On the stairs on the second floor, a middle-aged woman holding a mobile phone shouted. Her face was full of anger and panic, but she didn't dare to go down the stairs. The dozens of youths ignored her. They were still unscrupulously looting and scrambling, turning the supermarket on the first floor into a mess. 4 or 5 minutes later, 5 men rushed from the outside with sticks in their hands. The middle-aged man leading them was full of anger. He rushed out from the inside and chopped down the youth who was about to return with a full load. Another knife was directly aimed at the neck of another youth who was caught off guard. "Put them down. Whoever dares to rob this father of this supermarket, this father will kill him." The middle-aged man wiped the blood that splashed on his face and shouted loudly. In a flash, the dozens of youths in the supermarket stopped their actions and all quieted down. But just 5 or 6 seconds later a youth shouted, "Why are you afraid of them? There are only 5 of them and we have dozens of people. If we kill them, we can move all the things in this supermarket to our own house. Kill them." A chaotic battle broke out in an extremely short period of time. The middle-aged man and his 4 companions were chased and beaten out of the supermarket. At this moment, the 4 of them were all riddled with injuries. One of them was even more seriously injured. In the end, he fell at the entrance of the supermarket. What greeted him was a group of people beating him to death. Creak! An off-road vehicle stopped nearby. 2 robust middle-aged men jumped out of the vehicle and dashed towards the people who were attacking people. Violent auras and powerful combat power. Before the group of people could react, 4 or 5 of them had already been killed by the middle-aged man. "Kill those 2 bastards." Dozens of youths realized how powerful the 2 men were. They roared and bolstered their courage. They raised the weapons in their hands and rushed toward the 2 men. Puff, puff, puff. What did it mean to be a tiger in a flock of sheep? The scene in front of them was that the 2 middle-aged men grabbed the machetes on the ground and chopped those youths as if they were chopping melons. Their speed and strength were extremely fast. In just a few breaths, less than 10 of the dozens of youths were still alive. "The devil! Run! Run!" The rest of the youths didn't panic. They no longer had the slightest strength to fight. They dropped the weapons in their hands, and even the things they robbed from the supermarket, and ran away. However, their speed was too slow. The 2 middle-aged men were merciless and eventually caught up with all the youths and killed them all. Are they still human? At the corner of the street more than 100 meters away from the Huimin supermarket, the 4 middle-aged men who were previously chopped looked at the scene in front of them, dumbfounded. Dozens of young and strong lads. All of them were slaughtered. Moreover, they were so fast. Chapter 752. The 4 middle-aged men at the corner of the street were not the only ones who watched the massacre. Although it was a special period, there were still some people passing by. But at this time, everyone was hiding far away, looking at this one-sided massacre with fear. It was an era of peace, and there were very few murders on Miss Source Island in the past. But now dozens of people were killed in a massacre. This was simply unimaginable in the hearts of these people. At this moment, one of the 2 murderers stood proudly at the entrance of the Huimin supermarket. He glanced at the people in the distance and shouted in a deep voice, "They deserve to die for endangering public security. Miss Source Island is now under the threat of the darkening virus, but some people are creating panic, burning, killing, and looting. Such people must pay a painful price. The government can't manage it now, and the police can't be on duty. So people like us will replace the judges and police to enforce the law. All criminals who endanger public security must be punished by us." Replace the government? For a time, all the people who were afraid were filled with awe. They were well aware that the current public security was very poor, and even the police couldn't maintain public security because of the infection. Ordinary people like them were more or less affected by it. Suddenly, everyone's heart calmed down. Those who were ready to hide also put away the thought of leaving. They quietly observed their combat strength in various directions, watching the 2 killing gods. Vigilantes. That's right. In their hearts, they secretly gave these two people a name, Vigilante. The burly man standing proudly at the entrance of the Huimin supermarket looked around and noticed the change in the expressions of the surrounding people. Then he spoke in a clear voice again. It's the divine Dr. Gue Jianqiu from the mainland. He's doing his best to research the antidote for the darkening virus. I hope everyone can tell each other that the infectious disease crisis will be lifted soon. After saying that, he waved to the four middle-aged men at the corner and asked aloud, "How are your bodies? If the injuries are not serious, please ask your friends around to help dispose of these corpses. Remember, it's best to immediately send these corpses to the crematorium and burn them to prevent the emergence of other infectious viruses." We're fine. Although the four middle-aged men were badly injured, and one of them was seriously injured, they still forced themselves to walk step by step. Needless to say, the appearance of these two people had saved the lives of the four of them. They were their saviors. If that's the case, we'll be leaving first. There are still other areas that we need to patrol. The two men cupped their fists, then quickly returned to the car, started the car, and drove away. Python City. Wu Li dragged her tired body and carried some food that she had just bought from the supermarket. Step by step, she walked towards her home a few hundred meters away. She was also infected by the darkening virus, and it was a very serious case. Although the static electricity suppressed the spreading of the darkening virus, it tortured her day and night, causing her to feel weak all over. She was a single mother with a 6-year-old daughter. Although she usually had a good job and a considerable income, and even hired a nanny at home, the nanny had now left. She was the only one who could take care of her daughter. Haha, this feels great. The two drunk men were wearing suits, leather shoes, and ties. Even their hair was neatly combed. Even if they weren't bosses, they were at least executives of the company. However, the two of them looked a little drunk at the moment. Looking at the beautiful Wu Li, they even revealed lewd smiles. "What are you doing?" Wu Li's expression changed when she was blocked by the two men. She had heard that the entire Python City had been very chaotic in the past few days. There were even many murders. One of the men raised his hand and touched his chin. He laughed mischievously and directly pounced on Wu Li. He hugged her and impatiently kissed her. Slap. Although Wu Li didn't have much strength and couldn't even keep up with the speed of the man, it wasn't a problem for her to slap him. Unfortunately, her strength was limited, and she couldn't break free from the man's embrace. "Stinking whore. How dare you hit me?" The man let go of Wu Li and swung his fist at Wu Li's eye socket. After knocking her to the ground, he immediately started punching and kicking her. "Old Joe, don't hurt her. We brothers still need to have some meat today." The other man stopped him and was about to drag Wu Li up. Wu Li endured the pain in her body and shouted for help. However, there were many people passing by at this moment. There were at least dozens of people passing by within a radius of 200 meters, but none of them came to help. Everyone looked on with cold eyes, as if the matter had nothing to do with them. Creak. A car stopped nearby and a big man jumped out of the car. A sharp dagger directly pierced the two people's hearts. Aya! Wu Li was shocked by the sudden turn of events. She staggered a few steps back and fell on her butt on the cold concrete floor. The big man shouted in a deep voice, "The police can't maintain public order, so I'll be the representative of the law. Anyone who dares to endanger public safety, kill, burn, and loot, and commit all kinds of crimes will be killed without mercy. Listen to me, cowards around you. Whoever dares to create panic and violate the law will be mercilessly suppressed and killed by us." Divine Dr. Gue Jianqiu is currently researching an antidote to treat the infectious disease, and is expected to succeed in the next few days. I hope you can tell each other that you'll know your place and wait for the antidote to be delivered to your door. After saying that, the big man strode to Wu Li and looked at her panic-stricken face. He reached out to help her up from the ground and said, "Hurry up and go home. Wait for the antidote to be delivered to your door, and resume your normal life." "Thank you. Thank you." A grateful look appeared on Wu Li's face and she kept thanking him. The big man said with a simple and honest smile, "This is what we should do. It's everyone's responsibility to maintain social stability and ensure public order. Soon after, the big man returned to the car and quickly left. Wolfpack City. Mixed Summit City. Similar things were happening everywhere. Everyone who violated the law was mercilessly killed and suppressed in a bloody manner. The deeds of the vigilantes were also passed on by word of mouth and quickly spread in the 4 major cities. Some people who committed crimes and harbored evil intentions were shocked by the news and didn't dare to act rashly for a while. In addition, the news that divine Dr. Gue Jianqiu was researching an antidote and that he would be able to develop an antidote in the next few days was like it had grown wings and was known by countless people in the 4 major cities. Suddenly, they seemed to see hope and prayed that divine Dr. Gue Jianqiu could smoothly develop an antidote. Miss Source Island. In the south of the Central Mountain, in a village with only 1 or 2,000 households, Tanxiu personally killed a group of tyrannical village tyrants whose hands were stained with the blood of others, and then announced that divine Dr. Gue Jianqiu was about to develop an antidote for the darkening virus. Suddenly, everyone was grateful to Tanxiu. Everyone seemed to see hope. In the midst of the gratitude, the old village chief personally invited Tanxiu and Tang Han to visit his house. A sumptuous dinner, coupled with the wine brewed by the old village chief himself. Tanxiu still drank a lot even though he was ready to leave early to patrol other remote places. Ring, ring, ring. The ringtone of the communicator woke up the slightly drunk Tanxiu. Tanxiu took out his mobile phone and found that the call was from Gu Xiaoxue. He immediately answered and asked, "Xiaoxue, have you arrived?" "Grandmaster, we have entered Miss Source Island. Where are you now?" "We'll rush over there immediately." Gu Xiaoxue's sweet voice came from the communicator. "Go directly to the central mountain of Miss Source Island," said Tanxiu. "I'm in the village south of the central mountain. Contact me again when you come over." "All right." After hanging up the phone, Tanxiu immediately cancelled the idea of going to other places. Since Gu Xiaoxue and the rest had arrived, he would take them to the central mountain. It must be noted that the mountain was full of spiritual herbs, spirit fruits, and precious ores. They were the most scarce cultivation resources for the everlasting feast hall at present. In the evening, the sky was full of stars hanging in the night sky, and a cool breeze was blowing gently, bringing a cool and refreshing feeling to people. Tanxiu stood on a large bluestone at the entrance of the village and looked up at the vast starry sky. He had been back on Earth for nearly a year and had experienced a lot of things. It was reasonable to say that he should be very satisfied. After all, he had relatives, friends, a career, and a confidant. Even his most concerned disciple, Gu Yan'er, had come here. But at this moment he was somewhat lost and even missed the days in the immortal world. Of course, what he missed the most were his several best friends. He wanted to stand in front of them and cut them alive. "I will be kind to those who are kind to me. I will be evil to those who are evil to me. When I, Tanxiu, set foot on the fertile land of the immortal world again, I will unleash a bloody storm. Those who obey me will prosper, and those who oppose me will perish. No one can rule the immortal world for hundreds of millions of years, so I will reign above the myriad races and break through the threshold of the immortal world." Tanxiu clenched his fists, and his aura constantly surged. As he punched the void, layers of turbulent airflow caused ripples that spread in all directions. A kilometer away, more than a dozen cars quickly came. Gu Xiaoxue, who was sitting in the front car, could clearly see Tanxiu standing on a tree. His seemingly thin figure looked particularly imposing at the moment. His handsome appearance was even more dashing at this moment. There was also his surging momentum and boundless domineering aura, as if he was the ruler of the world. Bam, bam! Gu Xiaoxue felt her heartbeat suddenly accelerate, and a lingering fear swayed in her heart. An indescribable emotion lingered around him, unable to get rid of it. Chapter 753. A cool breeze blew as the shadows of the trees swayed. Tanxiu was keenly aware of the approaching vehicles. He trod on the air and walked to the ground step by step. As more than a dozen vehicles stopped in front of him, dozens of people got off and came before him. Tan Xiu's eyes then fell on the white-clothed, fairy-like Gu Xiaoxue. You've worked hard. Tan Xiu gently nodded with a smile on his handsome face. Gu Xiaoxue's eyes were particularly bright as she fixed her gaze on Tan Xiu's smile. Then she intimately said, "It's not us who has worked hard, Grand Master. It's you who has." "How's Yen Er's situation?" Tan Xiu asked with a smile. "Did she tell you anything before you came here?" "Master told me to send her regards to you, Grand Master," said Gu Xiaoxue. "Also, she can leave the Everlasting Feast Hall for the time being, but she can't stay for more than 2 days. So she's waiting for you. She said that she wants to go out with you after you go to Jingmen Island." 2 days. "I see," said Tan Xiu with a smile. "Are we going to the mountain you mentioned now, Grand Master?" asked Gu Xiaoxue. "Or should we wait?" asked Gu Xiaoxue. Tan Xiu looked at the dozens of people standing respectfully behind Gu Xiaoxue. They didn't look tired, but were full of vigor instead. After pondering for a moment, Tan Xiu said, "Let's take a rest first. I'll take you to the mountain early tomorrow morning. That mountain is somewhat special and shrouded by an array. I'm afraid it'll be very difficult to enter without my guidance." "We'll follow your arrangement, Grand Master." Gu Xiaoxue nodded. That night, Tan Xiu led everyone into the village. The courtyard occupied by the foreign forces was now unoccupied, so he didn't have to worry about living there. However, just as these people were settled down, Tang Han arrived in the darkness of the night. "Little brother, who are they?" Tang Han looked at Gu Xiaoxue and the dozens of people from the Everlasting Feast Hall, with a confused expression. "Big sis, let me introduce you," Tan Xiu said with a smile. "This is my grand disciple Gu Xiaoxue. The rest are from the Everlasting Feast Hall, and are also my subordinates. You can treat them as your own people, the kind of people you can entrust your life to." "The Everlasting Feast Hall? Grand disciple?" Tang Han looked at the beautiful Gu Xiaoxue with disbelief in her eyes. She knew about the Everlasting Feast Hall. Its headquarters was in Jingmen Island, and she heard that the business there was quite good. However, his younger brother was only 21 years old. How did he have a grand disciple? Moreover, looking at the girl's appearance, she seemed to be 1 or 2 years older than him. Gu Xiaoxue didn't know Tang Han's identity, but when she heard Tan Xiu call her sister, she immediately said respectfully, "Greetings, Martial Aunt. I am Gu Xiaoxue." "Martial Aunt?" Tang Han didn't know whether to laugh or cry when she heard this form of address. She suddenly felt that it was ridiculous. After hesitating for a while, she hurriedly said, "Gu Xiaoxue, you don't need to call me Martial Aunt. I should be a few years older than you. If you don't mind, you can call me Big Sis, or Big Sis Han. I don't know why you call Tan Xiu Grandmaster, but we're all modern people, so we can talk about our own things." This, Gu Xiaoxue was dumbfounded. She didn't expect that Tang Han would say such a thing. Subconsciously, she quickly glanced at Tan Xiu and shot him an inquiring look. Tan Xiu didn't care about the address, so he waved his hand and said, "Whatever you want to call each other, it's up to you." Tang Han pulled Gu Xiaoxue's hand and smilingly said, "See? Tan Xiu has no objection, so just listen to me. You can call me Big Sis or Big Sis Han. But if you call me Martial Aunt, you'll make me sound old." "This, alright then. Hello, Big Sis Han." Gu Xiaoxue braced herself and said, "Since we're on the same side, you don't need to be polite with me in the future," said Tang Han with a satisfied smile. "That's right, there's something I can't figure out. Why do you call Tan Xiu Grandmaster?" "Because he's my master's master," said Gu Xiaoxue. "Your master's master?" asked Tang Han with a strange expression. "Your master is—" "My master is Gu Yen said Gu Xiaoxue. "I was raised by my master. My master is my grandmaster's disciple, so he's naturally my grandmaster." Tang Han was a bit dizzy after hearing this theory. She realized that she couldn't ask anything from Gu Xiaoxue, so she immediately said to Tan Xiu, "Little brother, tell me what's going on?" "Yen is my disciple and Xiaoxue is Yen disciple, so it's right for Xiaoxue to call me grandmaster," said Tan Xiu. "I have several disciples, some of whom are a bit older. Do you know the Endless Virtue pharmaceutical?" "I do," said Tang Han immediately. The Endless Virtue Pharmaceutical is a large Chinese herbal medicine company in China, and its boss Chen Zhizhong is a very capable man. I've been to the inland many times, so I know some special people. Chen Zhizhong is also my disciple, though he's only my in-name disciple. Tan Xiao nodded. His son is older than me, but he still calls me Grandmaster. Chen Zhizhong is your disciple? Asked Tang Han in surprise. Heavens! What kind of ability do you have, little brother? You can even take Chen Zhizhong as your disciple? Didn't Grandpa tell you that I'm a cultivator? Asked Tan Xiao with a smile. Tang Han stared blankly for a moment before she immediately shook her head. Grandpa didn't tell me. All right, since Grandpa didn't tell you, then I'll tell you now, said Tan Xiao with a smile. If you also want to cultivate, big sister, I can teach you a cultivation technique so that you can have powerful strength. I'll learn it, replied Tang Han without hesitation. Although she had been staying on Miss Source Island for many years, she was, after all, a member of the Tang family and knew some rumors. For example, cultivators were simply existences akin to immortals, yet they really existed in this world. It was just that she never expected that this younger brother of hers turned out to be a cultivator. Little brother, since you're a cultivator, then can you fly like the legends say? Asked Tang Han with a face full of expectation. I'll naturally be able to fly when my cultivation reaches a certain level, said Tan Xiao with a smile. However, flying requires the help of some minor spells, such as the most basic qi control art. Well, don't ask about it for now. You'll understand it when you become a cultivator and have powerful strength. All right. Tang Han nodded with a look of expectation. Early in the next morning, Tan Xiao took Tang Han, Gu Xiaoxue, and dozens of members of the Everlasting Feast Hall to leave the village and rush toward the Misty Mountain. Since Tan Xiao had comprehended the array around the mountain, he easily brought everyone into the mountain. Heavens! Is this place a fairyland? Tang Han, who had never seen such a scene on the mountain, opened her mouth wide and looked shocked. Those towering trees were taller and bigger than the trees she had seen for hundreds of years. The size of those animals broke her impression of normality. Is that really a rabbit, little brother? Asked Tang Han incredulously as she looked at a rabbit the size of an adult yak. That's right. It's indeed a rabbit, said Tan Xiao with a smile. But if my guess is correct, that rabbit has lived for at least hundreds of years, maybe even more than a millennium. You can call it a rabbit demon. A rabbit demon? Tang Han's heart trembled and her footsteps instantly halted. Don't worry, Tan Xiao said with a smile. I've been to this mountain before, and found that the animals here are very docile. They won't hurt you as long as you don't take the initiative to attack them. Only then did Tang Han feel relieved and sincerely exclaimed, I didn't expect you to be this powerful, little brother. You must know that countless people have tried every means to come here, yet they have never succeeded. I never thought that I would be able to come to this mountain one day. It will definitely cause a great uproar if anyone outside knows about this place. Big sis, don't tell anyone about coming to this mountain, said Tan Xiao quickly. Not even your trusted men. This mountain can be called a treasure mountain. Right now, only we can enter, so even if it is occupied by the Tang family, we will not be able to enter. Even if it's occupied by our Tang family, I'm afraid outsiders will flock here if they know about it. I understand. Don't worry. Tang Han solemnly nodded. Tan Xiao then looked at Gu Xiaoxue and the other members of the Everlasting Feast Hall, and said in a deep voice, Don't try to climb higher. This mountain is very strange. The higher you go, the stronger the pressure you will encounter. You may get injured if you try to go up by force. Alright, you can start now. Pay attention to your own safety, and go all out to plunder the resources here. Our Everlasting Feast Hall needs them. Understood. Gu Xiaoxue and the others nodded. After frantically plundering, a huge number of spiritual herbs, spirit fruits, ores, and other resources were packed into 10 interspatial rings. These interspatial rings were refined by Ji Qimei in the Everlasting Feast Hall's HQ. Tan Xiao stayed in the mountain for the whole morning, and then left in a hurry, leaving everyone behind. After leaving the mountain, he immediately dialed Divine Dr. Gue Jianchou's communicator. Aha! Tan Xiao, I knew you wouldn't be able to resist calling me. I'll tell you some good news. I've developed an antidote, and it's based on your previous experiment theory. I've finally found the right direction. I've already told Yang Chuxiong about the research data and the medicinal herbs that need to be mass-produced. He has already taken the military personnel to work on it. Have you tested it? Asked Tan Xiao. Can it really cure the infectious disease? All 30 patients have been cured, answered Gue Jianqiu. That's great. Tan Xiao was pleasantly surprised. Thank you so much, Divine Doctor. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid we wouldn't have been able to solve the darkening virus crisis. Anyways, I have something important to do now. I'll immediately rush back to the military base after I'm done with it. I'll treat you to a drink at that time. God's nectar. Gue Jianqiu smilingly said. No problem. God's nectar, I'll fill you up, said Tan Xiao happily. Ha ha ha. Gue Jianqiu laughed heartily. Chapter 754. The problem of the darkening virus had been solved, and Tan Xiao finally felt relieved. After returning to the central mountain, he escorted the people of the Everlasting Feast Hall, while searching for precious resources. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. After 2 days of searching, a large number of precious medicinal herbs, spirit fruits, and 6 or 7 kinds of precious ores had been excavated. 6 of the 10 interspatial rings had been filled to the brim. According to Gu Xiaoxue, the resources obtained in these 2 days were enough for the Everlasting Feast Hall's normal consumption for 3 to 5 years. Tan Xiao was also in a very good mood. There were also various resources in his interspatial ring, but what made him the happiest was one of them, the Bell Spirit Stone milk. This kind of Bell Spirit Stone milk was definitely not an ordinary thing. A small mouthful of it could prolong an ordinary person's lifespan and be reborn. Tan Xiao was lucky enough to find a small spiritual vein in the crevice of the mountain stream. There was a narrow passage leading to the bottom of the spiritual vein. Although the amount of Bell Spirit Stone milk he obtained was not much, it was still several kilograms. I'm out. Outside the white mist area, Tan Xiao looked at the direction of the billowing white mist with unconcealable joy in his eyes. He was getting more and more curious about Earth. It was simply unimaginable for such a small planet in the vast universe to have so many heavenly and earthly treasures. He had once encountered a treasured planet in the Immortal world's star field. Although it was full of treasures, it was slightly inferior compared to the good things on Earth. Tang Han smiled and looked at the billowing white mist with a bit of reluctance. She had taken a mouthful of the Bell Spirit Stone milk and had been reborn. Not to mention that her cultivation had broken through to the martial arts grandmaster realm. Tan Xiao had taught her a set of cultivation technique, which had transformed the true qi inside her body into true essence. Once all of it was transformed into true essence, her strength would go up another level. It would be great if I could live here forever. Tang Han sighed from the bottom of her heart. Normal people will go crazy if they live here forever, said Tan Xiao with a smile. All right, big sis. Just tell me in advance when you want to come here later. I'll bring you in again. Tang Han smiled and said, It's a deal. Tan Xiao looked at Gu Xiaoxue and the others and said, Since we have searched the mountain range that can be climbed like a carpet, you can take everyone back. When our strength increases in the future, we can come back again and look for treasures at a higher place. Gu Xiaoxue asked curiously, Grandmaster, haven't you settled everything here? The harm caused by the darkening virus has been solved, and those foreign forces have been driven out. Don't tell me you don't want to return to Jingmen Island with us? Tan Xiao shook his head and said, Those things have been solved and my mission is considered completed, but I still need to stay here for some time. 2 days ago, I suggested to the commander of the garrison of Mist Source Island to set up a feng shui array around the island. This matter hasn't been done yet, so I can't leave for the time being. You're going to arrange a feng shui grand array that covers the entire Mist Source Island? Why is that? It's every citizen's duty to serve the country, Tan Xiao said with a smile. Of course, the country will provide a lot of jades, and I'll have the final say on how many jades are needed to arrange the array. Don't you think that you'd feel sorry for your hard work these days if you don't take this opportunity to make some money? Puffed. The exceptionally intelligent Gu Xiaoxue instantly understood what kind of wishful thinking Tan Xiu had in mind. She couldn't help but laugh and said, "You're really amazing, Grandmaster." Tan Xiu didn't dwell on this topic and instead said, "All right, you can go back now. I'll directly return to Jingmen Island after I'm done with the matters here." Understood. As Gu Xiaoxue left with her people, Tan Xiu came to the southern village where Mo Ao and the others were waiting. Upon seeing Tan Xiu come back, they immediately showed relaxed smiles. However, what made Tan Xiu feel strange was that Shui Gui's face was bruised and swollen. He was also injured and his smile was a bit forced. "What happened?" asked Tan Xiu while looking at Shui Gui. At the door of the house, Zhenlei Duomo lazily played with the dagger in her hand. She then looked up and said, "I did it." "What happened?" Tan Xiu frowned and stared blankly for a moment. "Shui Gui and Zhenlei Duomo had a match, boss." Mo Ao forced a smile and said, "Shui Gui was badly beaten. He wanted to take revenge, but he endured it because of your order. Now that they have a match, Shui Gui knows that he's not Zhenlei Duomo's match, so the depression in his heart has been alleviated a lot." Tan Xiu suddenly understood. He looked at the tangled Shui Gui and then at the indifferent Zhenlei Duomo. He then nodded and said, "That's all for now. I don't want to see you fight again. If you really want to fight to the death in the future, wait for me to break through the most important shackles. I'll be your witness then." Shui Gui turned his head and glared at Zhenlei Duomo. Then he respectfully said, "I've thought it through, boss. If she's really like us, I'll give up on revenge. According to the rules of our everlasting feast hall, we must never fight against our own people. However, I need Zhenlei Duomo to pay the price." Tan Xiu's expression moved as he looked at Zhenlei Duomo and said, "Let me confirm it again. Are you really Yan Er's adopted child? You even got her inheritance?" "That's right," said Zhenlei Duomo. After we arrive in Jingmen Island, once Yan'er has confirmed it, will you be willing to join the Everlasting Feast Hall?" asked Tan Xiu. "I need to make it clear to you that once you join the Everlasting Feast Hall, you'll be a member of the Everlasting Feast Hall in the future. You'll be a member of the Everlasting Feast Hall in life, and a ghost of the Everlasting Feast Hall in death. You must kill even those closest to you once they become enemies of the Everlasting Feast Hall." Zhenlei Duomo's expression turned serious. After pondering for a long time, she slowly said, "My life was given to me by her, and the achievements I have today are all thanks to her. She's my mother in my heart. So I'll do whatever she asks me to do. If she agrees to let you join the Everlasting Feast Hall, then you'll have to compensate Shui Gui with a year's allocation of resources. Do you have any objection?" asked Tan Xiu. "Allocation of resources?" Zhenlei Duomo thought about it, and felt that it should be the monetary salary she could get as a member of the Everlasting Feast Hall. She was not short of money and was even a billionaire. So she nodded and said, "Since this hatred can be resolved, I naturally have no problem with it." "Do you agree?" Tan Xiu looked at Shui Gui and asked. "I agree." Shui Gui nodded without a word. "Since it's settled, then let's write off all the previous grievances." Tan Xiu nodded and smilingly said, "After all, you both belong to different camps. After all, it's hard to say who's right and who's wrong since you both belong to different camps. Shortly put, I hope you can become brothers and sisters who fight side by side in the future, not enemies." "Understood." Shui Gui nodded solemnly. Zhenlei Duomo raised her hand indifferently and agreed with Tan Xiu's words. As a matter of fact, she had no interest in joining the Everlasting Feast Hall. In her opinion, apart from Tan Xiu and herself, no one else in the Everlasting Feast Hall could be her opponent. Joining such a force was fine, but it couldn't restrain her. The infectious disease problem has been solved and the foreign forces have been driven out. Tan Xiu smilingly said, "There's only one thing left for us to do. There is only one thing left for us to do. And that is to follow me to arrange a feng shui grand array on the periphery of Miss Source Island. After arranging the array, we'll go directly to Jingmen Island." Suddenly, he seemed to recall something and asked, "How's the security problem in Miss Source Island these days?" "We killed some people which played a very good deterrent role," said Mo. "The antidote for the darkening virus has been researched. which is like giving the residents of Miss Source Island a reassurance pill, so the security problem has been solved. Also, the antidote is being produced on a large scale. The military and government personnel have taken the antidote, and the police have taken over the normal order. Jinsher grinned and said, "You're famous again, boss. Now everyone in the entire Miss Source Island knows of your great name, and they are all deeply grateful to you, wishing that they could worship you." "What do you mean?" Tanshio stared blankly and asked with a puzzled expression. "What do you mean?" Jinsher smilingly said, "The antidote developed by divine Dr. Gue Jiancho was originally based on the research idea you provided before, which finally led to the current result. Therefore, when divine Dr. Gue Jiancho was interviewed by the media, he emphasized that you're actually the great contributor to the development of the antidote." Tanshio was dumbfounded. He never thought that divine Dr. Gue Jiancho would directly push him to the front of the stage. Although it was his responsibility to solve the problem in Miss Source Island, he never thought that he would be in the limelight. "Forget it. I'll arrange the feng shui array and leave immediately after a large number of jades are delivered. Even if I become famous here, it won't affect me in the future." Tanshio pondered for a moment and immediately relaxed. Standing next to Tanshio, Tang Han suddenly asked, "Little brother, will our relationship be exposed if you go back to the Tang Manor Martial School with me now?" "It will be." Tanshio was well aware of the power of the media. Since he had become a household name now, he believed that the media would soon learn about him once he appeared in the Tang Manor Martial School. If they were to dig deeper, they might even dig out the fact that he had been to the Tang Manor Martial School. "Big sis, we won't be going to the Tang Manor Martial School for the time being. Just contact me directly through the communicator if you want to see me in the next few days. Let's have a meal together when I leave. Also, I'll find a way to help you get a pass to freely enter and exit Miss Source Island. You can look for me outside whenever you miss me." Although Tang Han wanted to spend more time with Tanshio, she was perfectly aware of her mission, so she nodded and said, "If that's the case, then I'll take my leave first. Remember to tell me when you're about to leave. Big sis will cook a meal for you." "All right." Chapter 755. In the evening, Tanshio, Moao, and the others came to the military base on Miss Source Island. He learned that divine Dr. Gue Jiancho was supervising the production of the antidote for the darkening virus, so he didn't disturb him. As Yang Chuxiong hurried over, the two entered a conference room. "Mr. Tang, the #1 leader has agreed to your plan. The state is now collecting a lot of jades, and will send them to Miss Source Island in the near future." Yang Chuxiong was very excited. Once the array was set up, the entire Miss Source Island would be like an impregnable fortress, and there would be no need to worry about outsiders sneaking in. "How long will it take?" asked Tanshio. The leader said that the state has a batch of jades that can be sent immediately, but the quantity is only about 5 tons, said Yang Chuxiong. "If it's not enough, more jades will be sent later. But the leader doesn't know how much jades you need, so he asked me to ask you." 5 tons? Tanshio's mouth twitched a few times, and his heart was filled with excitement. It must be noted that even if the entire Miss Source Island was covered with an array, it would probably require less than a ton of jades. But the state actually sent 5 tons in the first batch. Wouldn't he be able to keep the rest for himself? It's a big profit. Tanshio was excited inwardly, but he didn't show it on the surface. Instead, he deliberately furrowed his brows and slowly shook his head. 5 tons of jades are not enough. You must know that Miss Source Island is very large, and the amount of jades needed is also very large. It's at least 15 tons. Yang Chuxiong thought for a while and nodded. 15 tons of jades is not a lot. The jade mines in our country can produce a lot of jades every year, but most of them are in the hands of private bosses, so the state needs to spend some time to buy them. Let's wait. All the jades should be sent here in 10 days to half a month. All right. Tanshio nodded with satisfaction. Tanshio had dinner with Yang Chuxiong. When divine Dr. Gue Jiancho learned that Tanshio had returned to the military base, he also rushed over and had a drink with Tanshio. When miracle Dr. Gue Jiancho was about to leave the military base, Tanxiu gave him 2 boxes of God's nectar, making him praise Tanxiu for being sensible. Yang Chuxiong also got some benefits. He also got 2 boxes of God's nectar. Of course, he didn't get it for free either. Yang Chuxiong made up a lie and helped Tang Han get a military pass. Even if the Feng Shui formation was set up, Tang Han would have the right to come and go as she pleased. Late at night, Tanxiu was sitting cross-legged in cultivation when someone knocked on his door. Mo Ao's voice came from outside. "Boss, someone from the mainland has come. It's the lady boss Mu Weining." "Lady boss?" Tanxiu smiled bitterly in his heart. He opened the door and asked, "Where is she?" "Jinshi has taken him to the barracks and is now on the way here," said Mo. "He should be here in a few minutes." Tanxiu nodded and went back to his room to put on his coat. Just as he came to the entrance of the 2-story building, he saw Mu Weining and 4 middle-aged men and women following behind Jinshi, as they came down from 2 military jeeps. Tanxiu. Mu Weining was very excited to see Tanxiu. She had been so busy recently because Tanxiu had introduced a lot of businesses to her. During this period, she only called Tanxiu a few times. Tanxiu let out a faint smile and said, "You've been working hard all the way here. Have a good rest tonight. I'll take you to the Qingyuan group tomorrow." Mu Weining gently nodded and came to Tanxiu. She restrained the urge to hug him, but still held Tanxiu's arm and affectionately said, "I miss you. I miss you very much." Tanxiu smiled and gently hugged her shoulder. After turning around and returning to the small building, he ordered Mo Ao to contact the management staff to arrange accommodation for the 4 people brought by Mu Weining. Then he took Mu Weining to the 2nd floor. "Is this your first time here?" After entering the room, Tanxiu took off his coat and asked with a smile, "It's my first time." Mu Weining nodded. "I've heard my dad mention it a few times before. I really didn't expect that the scenery on Miss Source Island would be so beautiful. If it weren't for the fact that I still have a lot of things to do outside, I would have thought of settling down here. The environment here is really good. At least, the air here is many times better than Shanghai." Tanxiu smiled. "If you like it here, you can buy a house here later. You can come here for a vacation and relax when you want to come here. All right. You can accompany me." Mu Weining said with a smile. Tanxiu couldn't help laughing and said, "I'll accompany you if I have time in the future." Afterward, the 2 of them chatted about some recent events. Finally, Mu Weining said with a bit of worry, "My dad has learned about the Qingyuan group situation, and he's very angry, especially when he learned that you solved the Qingyuan group's problem." "What do you think about it then?" Tanxiu smiled. "I understand what you're thinking about." Mu Weining smiled. "My dad has indeed gone too far these years. Now that I've invested in the Qingyuan group and own 25% of its shares, my dad's income will be stuck with me in the future. Don't worry about it. If my dad needs money in the future, he won't dare to show any objection to you." Tanxiu couldn't help laughing and said, "If your dad knows what you're thinking about, I'm afraid he'll be so angry that his nose will be crooked. It's said that a grown girl can't be kept at home, so he must think so." Mu Weining was a bit shy, but she still said, "A married daughter is like water that has been poured out. Although I'll be filial to him, I can't let him do whatever he wants. My mom has suffered a lot of grievances all these years, and I can't let you suffer the same. It seems that I'm really happy to have a girlfriend like you," Tanxiu said with a smile. Mu Weining used to be very reserved, and coupled with her indifferent personality, she looked more gentle and virtuous, like a fairy who didn't eat the common food of the world. But at this moment, an inexplicable impulse emerged inside her heart and she said, "Marry me early if you feel happy." Ugh! Tanxiu was stumped by her words for a long time and couldn't speak. He let out a hollow laugh a few times and then said, "We're still too young, not even the legal age for marriage. Besides, we're still students. Let's wait until we graduate from college. We'll get married after we graduate." Mu Weining said softly. Tanxiu sighed inwardly, but there was a bit of a smile on his face as he said, "No problem." That night, Mu Weining stayed in Tanxiu's room to rest, while Tanxiu cultivated the whole night. The next day he was still in high spirits as he rushed to the Qingyuan group with Mu Weining. After solving the stock issue, he sent Mu Weining away and then returned to the military base. He waited for 2 days. 5 tons of good quality jades were delivered. When Tan Xiu looked at these jades, his eyes shone. When he participated in the stone gambling meet in Star City, he spent a lot of money to buy a little bit of jades. But now he could get more than 100 times more jades by just moving his lips and working a bit harder. This kind of comfortable feeling made his mood very good. What do you think of these jades, Mr. Tang? Yang Chuxiong, who accompanied Tan Xiu, looked at the jades in the container truck and asked. The quality is very good. Tan Xiu nodded with satisfaction and said, it's no problem to arrange a feng shui array. However, I still need to urge Division Commander Yang to arrange the array as soon as possible, so that I can go back earlier. Don't worry, Yang Chuxiong said. No one dared to neglect the order since it was issued by the #1 leader. I just got the news that all the jades needed can be transported to Miss Source Island in 5 days at most. So, when do you think we can arrange the array? I need to personally survey the surrounding terrain of Miss Source Island in the next few days, said Tan Xiu. Then I'll start immediately. I'll take these jades with me and bury them in a specific location. If all the jades can be delivered within 5 days, I can arrange the array in half a month at most. No problem, said Yang Chuxiong excitedly. Time fleeted by and a week passed in the blink of an eye. Tan Xiu had obtained 15 tons of good quality jades. After on-site investigation, he finally determined that the amount of jades needed for the array was less than a ton. Therefore, the remaining 14 tons of jades were naturally pocketed by him and taken for himself. Arranging the array around the entire Miss Source Island was definitely not a small project. But with the help of Mo Ao and the others, Tan Xiu's arrangement speed was very fast. He buried all the jades in the 36 important foundations around Miss Source Island. Boss, a leader from the Miss Source Island government just called and said that he wants to see you. The reporters from the Miss Source Island TV station also want to interview you. How should I reply to them? Mo Ao came to Tan Xiu and asked in a low voice. Tan Xiu looked at the white mist in the distance and said without hesitation, reject them all. Just say that I'm busy with important things and have no time to accept the interview, let alone see them. Tell them to find Yang Chuxiong if they have something they want to know. Mo Ao complied and left with the communicator. Time passed quickly again. On the 13th day after all the jades were delivered, Tan Xiu finally arranged the entire array. The array he arranged was also known as the interlocking array. On one hand, it could be used for defense, and on the other hand, it could also be used for offense. On the southern coastline of Miss Source Island, thousands of military soldiers had sealed off the entire area within a radius of more than 10 kilometers. No one could leave Miss Source Island for the time being, nor could they come in from the outside. Yang Chuxiong stood beside Tan Xiu and looked at the 2 18-meter-high pillars, his mind shrouded in mist. He wanted to ask Tan Xiu several times about why he arranged these 2 pillars here, but after seeing the solemn expression on Tan Xiu's face, he understood that it was not convenient for Tan Xiu to be disturbed. It's almost time. Tang Xiu immediately looked at Yang Chuxiong and said as the sun set in the west and was blocked by the white mist in the distance. What's almost time? Asked Yang Chuxiong, confused. It's almost time to witness a miracle, said Tan Xiu with a faint smile. Division Commander Yang, tell your military soldiers to withdraw 5 kilometers. Chapter 756. Upon hearing Tan Xiu's words, Yang Chuxiong immediately realized that the array was about to be successfully arranged. Full of excitement, he quickly issued an order to withdraw the troops. Mr. Tang, we've withdrawn 5 kilometers. A smile was outlined on the corner of Tan Xiu's mouth. As he lifted his feet, it was as if there was an invisible staircase in front of him as he walked step by step through the void to the coastline more than 10 meters high. Heavens! What did I just see? Yang Chuxiong's heart was pounding and his eyes were as big as copper bells. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never have believed that someone could walk on the void. Was he still a human? Suddenly, Yang Chuxiong realized why this young man, whom he had once despised, was sent by the country's #1 leader to solve the crisis on Miss Source Island. He was simply a celestial being. Tan Xiu didn't know how shocked Yang Chuxiong was, nor did he have the time to care about it. His eyes looked around and then slowly spread his arms. A surging aura instantly erupted from his body. Even though Yang Chuxiong was used to seeing the big shots in the country, he was still startled by the surging aura coming from Tan Xiu. At this moment, Tan Xiu gave him the feeling that a towering mountain suddenly appeared in front of him. Activate the array. A deep voice came out of Tan Xiu's mouth. Waves of primal chaos force were released from his hands and instantly fused into the array pattern of the void array. In an instant, a layer of airflow ripples appeared out of thin air. Ancient characters that had experienced the vicissitudes of life loomed in the ripples, and then spread to both sides at a very fast speed. 10 minutes passed. Tan Xiu's body suddenly trembled, and his complexion turned pale. He quickly swooped down and appeared in front of Yang Chuxiong in the blink of an eye. The moment his feet touched the ground, his legs gave way and he staggered 2 steps forward. Mo, who had sharp eyes and quick hands, caught him. "Boss," Mo called out with a worried look on his face. Tan Xiu raised his arm and shook his head. "I'm fine. I just consumed too much power. I'll be fine after resting for 2 days. This Miss Source Island is too big, and it takes a lot of energy to activate the entire array. Looks like my current cultivation is still not enough." Mo, on the other hand, looked at him with admiration and said, "Your cultivation is improving rapidly, boss. I believe it won't be long before you reach a higher level." Tan Xiu faintly smiled. Then he looked at the dumbfounded Yang Chuxiong and said, "I've completed my task, Division Commander Yang. The entire array has been activated. The distance between these 2 pillars is 24 meters, which is also the entrance to Miss Source Island. I'll tell you how to open the entrance. As for who you'll send to guard this place, it has nothing to do with me. Also, you know where the exit is, so I'll leave the rest to you." Yang Chuxiong watched as the rippling airflow slowly dissipated and returned to its original state. Only then did he sober up from the shock. He looked at Tan Xiu and said, "I'll arrange it, Mr. Tang." The next day, Tan Xiu left Miss Source Island with Mo and the others. Although the chaos force within his body had recovered by less than 50%, the feeling of weakness had completely disappeared. Standing on the bow deck, he looked at the vast sea in front of him with a complicated expression. He recalled the moment when he left the Tang Manor Martial Arts School last night. Tang Han's tearful and reluctant appearance was all over his face. At this moment, he was even considering whether he should return to the mainland and talk to the old man about Miss Source Island. The present Tang family was no longer the Tang family of the past. As long as he was alive, the Tang family would be safe and sound. Moreover, the 9 Dragons Island would be completed in a few months at most. Once the island could be used, the Tang family's biggest escape route would be 9 Dragons Island. "Shall we go to Jingmen Island directly, Mr. Tang?" Zhenlei Duomo, clad in a black leather coat, came to Tan Xiu's side and asked. Tan Xiu glanced at her and indifferently said, "We're going to Jingmen Island. Will I be able to see her soon?" asked Zhenlei Duomo quickly. Tan Xiu didn't rush to answer and instead asked, "Zhenlei Duomo, what do you think people live for? If you had more power, what would you do?" Zhenlei Duomo stared blankly and immediately fell into silence. What do people live for? For happiness and happiness? What else can I do if I have more power? Money, rights? Zhenlei Duomo was silent for a long time. Then, she shook her head and said with a blank expression, "I don't know. I only know that I want to live, and I want to live a better life." Given your current strength, not many people can take your life if you don't want to die. Tan Xiu asked back. Besides, you're now at the foundation establishment stage, and your lifespan is much longer than ordinary people. Don't you have any pursuits after living for such a long time? What pursuits do you have? Asked Zhenlei Duomo. Me. A strange expression appeared on Tan Xiu's face as he slowly said, "I'm afraid my pursuits are a bit higher than yours. I want to live as long as the heaven and earth, and I want to stand above the myriad races. Maybe one day in the future, I'll become a god and go to the legendary god realm." Becoming a god? God realm? A sneer appeared on Jinlei Duomo's face. She didn't believe that gods and immortals existed in this world. In her opinion, if gods and immortals really existed, the earth wouldn't be like this now. Therefore, she thought that Tanxiu was just indulging in a whimsical and boring fantasy. Tanxiu was keenly aware of the sneer on Jinlei Duomo's face. He indifferently smiled and said, "Now it's your turn. What do you want to do in the future?" Jinlei Duomo took a deep breath and said, "I want to be the godfather of all the gangs in the world." Cough cough. Tanxiu nearly choked to death upon hearing her words. The godfather of gangs? That's all you've got? It was really hard for him to imagine that a cultivator with monstrous cultivation would become the godfather of gangs. Most importantly, she's a woman. Tanxiu was really unable to ridicule Jinlei Duomo's dream. He turned straight back to the cabin and waited for the liner to arrive at Jingmen Island. Coming to Miss Source Island this time could be said to be a fruitful harvest. At least, he wouldn't have to worry about cultivation resources for a long time in the future. Even more so, he was confident that it wouldn't be long before he could break through again and reach a higher level. Furthermore, once his disciple, Gu Yan'er, recovered her strength, he would definitely be able to walk unhindered on Earth. 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The liner stopped on the shore of Jingmen Island. Just as Tanxiu came out of the cabin, he saw Gu Yan'er standing gracefully on the shore. Her white dress fluttered in the wind, making her look like a pure and clean fairy maiden. Her breathtakingly beautiful face was full of excitement. Whoosh! A lightning-fast figure instantly rushed out from behind Tanxiu. In almost the blink of an eye, Jinlei Duomo appeared in front of Gu Yan. "You!" Jinlei Duomo looked at Gu Yan'er in disbelief. Gu Yan'er's peerless appearance had long been engraved in her heart. But what she couldn't believe was that Gu Yan'er's appearance hadn't changed in the slightest after more than 20 years. She was still so beautiful and young. Gu Yan'er's eyes reluctantly moved away from Tanxiu and fell on Jinlei Duomo's face. She slightly froze for a moment before her eyes widened and said in surprise, "You're little Duomo?" Tears overflowed from Jinlei Duomo's eyes. She bit her lower lip with her white teeth and said with a trembling voice, "It's really you. I'm not dreaming. You're still so young and beautiful. I didn't expect to see you again after so many years," Gu Yan'er said with a gratified smile. "You've grown up, little Duomo." Jinlei Duomo's voice trembled. "You didn't let me come to China at that time. I've endured it countless times and dreamed to see you again. Can you let me call you mother? Because you're my mother in my heart." Mother? Gu Yan'er was at a loss whether to laugh or cry. She wasn't married, so how could she have a child? Besides, she had raised too many children, more than 100 in total. If everyone called her mother, wouldn't she become the woman with the most children? "Call me master." Gu Yan'er subconsciously looked at Tanxiu, who had already approached her, and then slowly said, she could have children, but her children must be her own, and the most important thing was to have children with him. Jinlei Duomo knew what the word master meant, so she knelt in front of Gu Yan'er without hesitation and kowtowed 3 times. Only then did she get up and said, "Master, you won't abandon me again, right? I had something important to do back then, so I made up an excuse to leave you abroad." Gu Yan'er sighed. "Later, because of my physical condition, I let you wander outside. But how did you come back with your grandmaster?" "Grandmaster?" Jinlei Duomo looked at Tanxiu and was surprised. "Are you talking about him, master?" "Don't be rude, little Duomo," said Gu Yan'er immediately. "He's my master, so he's naturally your grandmaster." Jinlei Duomo incredulously said, "But master, his age." "Ugh, I know I'm wrong. Hello, grandmaster. You want to ask me why I'm so young, right?" Tanxiu lightly smiled. "Ah, I do look very young, but look at your master. Isn't she also very young? In fact, once a cultivator's cultivation reaches a high level, the changes in their appearance will slow down, and they can even stay young forever." Jinlei Duomo was shocked. As a woman, how could she not want to stay young forever? For a moment, her eyes were particularly bright. Gu Yan'er looked at Tanxiu again. She gently walked a few steps and opened her arms to gently hug Tanxiu, saying, "Master Yan'er misses you." Tan Xiao was at a loss whether he had to cry or laugh. Yen, there are so many people watching. Besides, your disciple is also here. I've lived for thousands of years. What kind of things have I not experienced? Gu Yan'er gently shook her head. Master is the most important person in my heart. I miss you and I really miss you. I don't need to hide it in front of anyone. Chapter 757. Tan Xiao felt warm inwardly. He gently patted her back and smilingly said, Since you miss me, Master will stay on Jingmen Island for a while to accompany you. Let's go. Gu Yan'er released Tan Xiao and happily held Tan Xiao's arm. In her eyes, whether it was Zhenlei Duomo or the others she had trained, all of them were not as important as her master, Tan Xiao. The only reason why she could survive until now was because of Tan Xiao. 100 meters away, dozens of men and women in black suits and sunglasses stood in front of a row of black cars. Although there were a lot of onlookers around, they could only stop hundreds of meters away. Zhenlei Duomo followed behind Gu Yan'er and Tang Xiao. When she saw the dozens of people, she saw some familiar faces among them, causing her pupils to suddenly contract and her muscles to tense up. She was also a ruthless character who had gone through fire and water countless times abroad. She had fought with many people on the battlefield and climbed up from piles of corpses. Those familiar faces were similar to her. Each of them was a powerhouse who had survived from piles of corpses. However, she couldn't figure out why these people would appear here. Zhenlei Duomo slowed down her pace and asked in a low voice, Why are the Dark Knight Overlord, Bloodthirsty Viper and Golden Bat here? Are they the same as you? People of the Everlasting Feast Hall? And all of them are cultivators? Well, there's no harm in telling you since you're already one of us, said Mo Ao indifferently. They are indeed people of the Everlasting Feast Hall, and core members of the Everlasting Feast Hall. Not only the three of them, but also the others. Zhenlei Duomo's body trembled and a horrified expression filled her eyes. She was originally surprised that the Everlasting Feast Hall only had 11 cultivators, including Mo Ao, and all of them were Tan Xiao's men. Now it seemed that he was ridiculously wrong. Just over 20 years ago, his master, Gu Yan'er, was already powerful and invincible, and belonged to the Everlasting Feast Hall. And now, dozens of powerful cultivators suddenly appeared. What kind of terrifying power did the Everlasting Feast Hall possess? Brother Ao, how many cultivators does the Everlasting Feast Hall have? Could it be that every one of them is as powerful as you? A smile outlined on the corner of Mo Ao's mouth as he said, Even I don't know how many cultivators the Everlasting Feast Hall has. Perhaps the person who knows it the best is Little Boss. However, Little Boss didn't seem to be here. But they should be here. Who are they? Zhenlei Duomo was confused. Your luck is very good, said Mo Ao. We were all very envious that he was accepted as a disciple by the previous boss. They are your senior brothers and sisters. Do you see the only one wearing white clothes over there? He is light. Since he appeared here, darkness must be nearby. Are they very powerful? Zhenlei Duomo asked curiously. There's a big gap between us and them, said Mo Ao seriously. Even you are far inferior to them. Zhenlei Duomo fell into silence. She was not an arrogant and conceited woman. On the contrary, she was very smart. Although she hadn't known Mo Ao for a long time, she could see that he was not the kind of person who would talk nonsense. Since he could be sure that the other party was stronger than her, it was unlikely that he was wrong. The Everlasting Feast Hall. Zhenlei Duomo's expression was a bit complicated. She felt more and more that the Everlasting Feast Hall had a terrifying power that was unfathomable. However, the only fortunate thing was that she had successfully joined the Everlasting Feast Hall. Suddenly, she seemed to recall something and quickly asked, Brother Ao, when we were in Miss Source Island, Grand Master said that he would compensate Shui Gue with a year's worth of resources. How much money can the Everlasting Feast Hall give us a year? Money? Mo Ao looked at her with a strange expression and said, Money doesn't mean much to the core members of the Everlasting Feast Hall. It's actually very easy for us to get money if we want it. The Everlasting Feast Hall's resource allocation is, in fact, elixirs, weapons, magical techniques, and any other cultivation resources that are helpful to cultivators. If the Everlasting Feast Hall doesn't allocate these resources, it's impossible to buy them even if you have trillions of wealth. As for the quantity, it's not a lot. But if we buy them ourselves, we'll need about 1 billion. Aren't we not allowed to buy them? Asked Jinlei Duomo, confused. Outsiders can't buy them, but our core members can, said Moo. It's just that the form of purchase is different. For example, elixirs that are helpful to cultivation. Refining elixirs requires a lot of medicinal herbs, so we can spend money to buy those herbs and exchange them for elixirs. Jinlei Duomo immediately understood, but she still asked, elixirs are helpful to our cultivation? Let me give you an example. You've broken through to the foundation establishment stage, but you should still be at the early stage. The most suitable elixir for you now is the essence amassing pill, said Moo. Taking an essence amassing pill can reduce your cultivation time by about 5 years. In other words, if you want to break through from the early stage to the middle stage of foundation establishment stage, you'll need 10 years. But if you take an essence amassing pill, you'll only need 5 years to break through to the middle stage of foundation establishment stage. Gasp! Jinlei Duomo sucked in a breath of cold air. She was shocked by Moo's description. This kind of elixir was the same as the legendary elixir from the East. Jinlei Duomo quickly glanced at the indifferent expression on Shui Gui's face. Regret filled her heart. Had she known that the Everlasting Feast Hall would distribute such good resources, how could she have easily agreed to use a year's quota to resolve the enmity with Shui Gui? Jingmen Island, Everlasting Feast Hall's HQ. As soon as Tan Xiu got off the car, he smelled the fragrance of medicinal herbs in the air. He looked inside and curiously asked, "Is Ji Qimei refining elixirs?" Ever since Xiaoxue came back from Miss Source Island with a lot of precious medicinal herbs, Elder Ji has been refining elixirs in her alchemy room. Gu Yan'er chuckled. Originally, the number of elixirs in our treasure vault was very small, but it's now more than enough after she's been refining elixirs. I've seen those medicinal herbs, and their quality is very good. Even in the immortal world, there are several of them that are hard to get. Our Everlasting Feast Hall shouldn't be lacking elixirs in the next few years. That's good news. Tan Xiu nodded and smilingly said. Shortly after, the duo then chatted about a lot of topics, including Jinlei Duomo's matter. When Gu Yan'er learned that Jinlei Duomo had become the second in command of a foreign gang, she was at a loss whether she had to cry or laugh. Master, Grand Master. Dressed in a white dress, Gu Xiaoxue came before Gu Yan'er and Tan Xiu and respectfully greeted them. Xiaoxue, how's Elder Ji's elixir refining going? Asked Gu Yan'er with a smile. Has she refined the soul revolving pill that I asked her to? Gu Xiaoxue stretched out her hand and handed over a jade bottle. It's been refined, but the quantity is very small, only 2 in total. Elder Ji said that the medicinal herbs needed to refine the 9 Revolution soul pill are too rare, so she can only refine these 2 at most. It's already a lot to be able to refine 2 of them, said Gu Yan'er with a satisfied smile. Master, take this 9 Revolution soul pill as soon as possible. This 9 Revolution soul pill will be very helpful to you given your current cultivation level. Tan Xiu took the jade bottle, unplugged the cork and sniffed it. He then nodded and praised. It's indeed the 9 Revolution soul pill. Countless immortals in the immortal world want to get this kind of elixir. Yet I didn't expect it to appear on Earth. However, I can't take it for the time being because my cultivation level is still too low. Taking this 9 Revolution soul pill will not only bring me no benefits, but will also bring me some hidden dangers instead. Hidden dangers? Why? Asked Gu Yan'er with a puzzled expression. If I take the 9 Revolution soul pill now, I'll need to go into seclusion for at least several years to fully absorb its medicinal efficacy, said Tan Xiu with a wry smile. Else my body may explode due to the huge medicinal efficacy it contains. Gu Yan'er stared blankly for a moment before she immediately understood and said, You haven't cultivated your golden core yet, Master. I really want to see you become stronger, so Tan Xiu interrupted her and said, My current cultivation path is different from ordinary cultivators. To be precise, I'm now a devil cultivator. Devil cultivator? But you don't have any devil chi on you, master? Asked Guyener, puzzled. Do you still remember the heavenly art of cosmic genesis? Asked Tanxio lightly. Guyener's eyes widened and said, That made you change to another cultivation technique? I remember rumors saying that ordinary immortals can't cultivate the heavenly art of cosmic genesis, right? Cultivating the heavenly art of cosmic genesis requires extremely harsh conditions. Tanxio nodded. And I happen to be suitable. If it were me in the past, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to cultivate it. Guyener suddenly understood and smilingly said, Master, if you change to another cultivation technique, I believe it will be much better than your previous one. Yener can't wait to see Master return to being a supreme in the immortal world again. Tanxio let out a faint smile, and no longer talked about this topic. Whether it was Tanxio or Guyener, they didn't plan to tell Zhenlei Duomo about the existence of the exquisite pagoda for the time being. As Zhenlei Duomo was arranged elsewhere, Tanxio and Guyener came to the exquisite pagoda. The days spent together as master and disciple were relaxed and happy. However, when a visiting card was sent to Tanxio's hand, Tanxio suddenly remembered something. He had yet to give Li Jiren the medicinal pill he had promised him. He hadn't even refined it yet. Afterward, Tanxio entered Ji Qimei's alchemy room and began to crazily refine the medicinal pill. After the life essence pill was finished, Tanxio didn't go to see Li Jiren, but sent someone to deliver it to him. Just as Tanxio got a lot of money and was in a very good mood, a phone call came to his cell phone. See you tomorrow night in Jingmen Island. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.